Heyo everybody, Haku here with an arc ranking video featuring Bawss Jesse, Dr. Bonehead, and Kick the Can Productions. Super huge thank you for all of them for being here. And yeah, I really hope you all enjoy it. I will leave links to all of their stuff down in the description, so definitely, and also the comments, I always do that too, so definitely go and watch all of their stuff, because I already watch all of their stuff. So yeah, I guess the way we're going to do this, the way we're going to set this up, is we have split the series into 12 segments because we can't list like every single arc by title. So we've split it into Season 1, Return of the Prince, which for me is like everything through the end of the end of the Hand of Arlen stuff, because that's where we get the time skip that leads us into the workshop battle. Then third, we have the workshop battle. Fourth, we're into Revolution Road, then Dollar Show, which is going to include like all the stuff around those things. Then Name Hunt Station, Floor of Death, naming these off the top of my head, Hidden Floor, Last Station, The Cage, The Walls, and The Nest. And of course the walls is like the wall with the sleeping forget-me-not, and the wall with the wall of peaceful coexistence, because we kind of jump back and forth between the two. So yeah, I guess we're gonna start with our 12th place, like our least favorite one. I don't want to say worst, because I don't really hate any arcs. And then we'll just count up until we get to our favorite one, make sure everybody has time to talk about what their last place is. So if anybody wants to reveal their last place arcs, I guess go for it. Or anybody has any intro stuff they want to say, go for it.
I've got nothing for the intro, but I am very curious what everyone put as their number 12. Yeah, because I want to reiterate what you said, Haku. I love every arc. It's not like I hate this
feeling that they're going to be very similar.
Now I'm scared.
Probably. Anyone want to go first?
I'll go first. Oh, okay. You want to go? You can. I'll gladly go first.
Oh God, go ahead. That makes me worried too.
I would put the walls as 12. I would.
Hey, I did the same thing.
Walls you put the walls?
Walls is number 12.
The walls is in the top half for me. Oh my God.
Really?
Oh my God.
Wow.
The walls is in my top half. Oh wow. Okay, so I'm ready to hear everybody's justification. Jesse, what's yours?
In my last place is the Last Station.
Okay, that's more close to where I have it. I had the Cage in last place.
Okay. That's what I thought everyone was gonna put.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah. Wow, the walls.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we
really
can go
tough.
around. Everybody talk about why it's in last place for you.
Like
Haku's.
I'm shattered. I didn't expect the walls. I didn't expect it.
I have the walls as number 12, and it's weird because they gave me one of my favorite characters in the series, Cha. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like every single other arc has like a defining moment that stands out for me just a little bit more than everything that was going down. So it's just like, as I kept going down, I'm like, oh God, it's down here.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that.
So I'm like, it's for that reason alone. But as far as storytelling wise, it's really well done. Just how we're introduced to the walls, and how it's just like, boom, we're here, and you are now ejected into this new area, and here you go. Right. And we're all playing catch up. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
That, and it is very transitional between the Cage and the Nest.
Yeah.
That was my main critique of it. Like, I looked up the numbers. It's like 16 chapters long. Like, it doesn't even feel like it's a whole arc with like a beginning, middle, and end. It feels like the Cage Part 2, because it literally is like Yama gets sent to the walls, and there he is, and we gotta, okay, now there's these other walls, and it to me feels like there's some cool stuff that happens, like Calavan and White and Dawn and Cha. It's really cool, but to me it doesn't beat out, like, even something like the Cage. I feel like there's more substance there, personally.
Yes.
I can agree with that, but wow, now I'm just feeling really embarrassed as somebody who put the walls really highly.
No, don't feel embarrassed.
I guess I'll get to my defense of it when we get to where I placed it, but wow. Okay. So, Jesse, why Last Station?
Last Station, I feel like to me, Last Station was just really not the ending to the Hell Train saga that I wanted. I think it was I think there are some good moments in there, but for me, for the most part, it's just kind of an arc that's like devoid of substance. Like it's a lot of fighting. It's a lot of fighting, and it's a lot of like characters like kind of revealing their plans and being introduced. But there's not a lot of like. I feel like the closest thing it had to, or for me, an emotional investment in the arc, was Bomb learning about Jin Sung and his capture, which to me, as someone who wasn't very invested in a strong relationship between them, that didn't really hit for me. I had higher expectations for Karaka in that arc as well. I kept thinking that SIU was going to do something with him because he kept having these like little moments with him, and those didn't really pay off in a meaningful way. One thing I'll say that I really loved about it, the way it ends, I think where it leaves Bomb in a state where he's pretty angry, he's feeling really powerless, and he kind of needs to get back, and luckily Evankel comes to train him. I think that's really good. I love the end discussion with him in Iraq. And actually, the one thing, I think, I know everyone goes crazy in the nest for the Kun Bomb hug. The Bomb Shibizu hug is a really good one for me.
Yeah.
But overall, I just, it just didn't click with me. And I think the biggest thing for me, too, is that Yuri was a very annoying character in that arc in my eyes. I actually didn't like the way that Yuri was handled, because I thought there was a really good conflict between her and Chi and he, and I didn't like how it was resolved at all, with Yuri just ignoring it and just, punching Chi and he's lights out anyway.
You have, like, I agreed with pretty much all of your points up until the Yuri thing, and then you kind of also won me over a bit on the Yuri thing, where I was like, okay, maybe I can see that. Okay, yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
So for me, the Cage, like I said, there's no arc that's completely irredeemable, but for me, the Cage is in bottom place, which for me kind of surprised me when making this video, because I was like, I don't think I'll rate anything as lowly as Last Station. But the Cage I ended up putting below Last Station because... Okay. So some of the things I like a lot of the new characters. I love Yama. He's one of my absolute favorite characters in the series. I love Jordan, my boy. Absolutely one of my favorite characters. I really love Berdych, and insane, unrealistic amount for how little she actually does.
Yes.
So yeah, I love a lot of the new characters. But I feel like the issue with the Cage, even before we get to the Cage, has to do a lot with the early chapters in Season 3. I feel like Bomb's presentation is not great in the early chapters of Season 3. So it's one thing to have Bomb come back, to have him, like, slaughter all the random fighting dog guys, and it's like, oh wow, he's strong. He has grown. And that's really good. I really liked that. But then we introduce Yul and Kel, who we had just seen take down Yiwan Danwan. It's like, okay, they might actually be a threat. But then it turns out they're allies of Levy, and they were talking shit about Levy, and they didn't fare any better. Bomb just, like, backhands Yul into oblivion the second he sees him, and it's like, well, the tension with them as bad guys is gone. Then we get the reintroduction of Varagarv, and it's like, okay, cool. Bomb embarrasses Varagarv, which completely devalues Varagarv as a character, as if he wasn't there already. But it's just like we saw the same thing happen with Bomb's character multiple times back to back to back. And it's like, I get if you want to show how much he's grown over the time skip, but maybe you can do it in different ways, maybe not the same way multiple times. So we get that just to start out the season. And like, the early chapters aren't all bad, because I know it's something that Joe brings up from time to time. I like the comedy chapter where they revive Kun. We have Devi and Little Yoon. I like that chapter.
Yeah.
Then I have one bullet point that I think you'll all agree with when it comes to me putting the Cage last, and that is Chang's death. Chang's death is the worst.
Absolutely.
It's probably my least favorite moment of Season 3.
It's my least favorite moment of Tower of God, probably. Because I would say, if anybody were to ask me if there was any moment in Tower of God that's bad writing, I'd be like, I don't like this, or I don't like this. I legitimately think Chang's death is bad writing. because
Yeah.
so we spent all this time. Yuri looks at Chang and is like, "Oh wow, that guy's kind of strong." Jin Sung clashes against Chang. He's like, "Wow, this guy's really strong," and then we kill him for nothing. It didn't gain us anything to kill him.
Came out of nowhere too.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, I think the reasoning behind it, because SI even
makes
said
it
in his
worse,
blog post, his reasoning was like, well, I wanted to show how rankers are like superior to regulars. He said something about like the regular ranker dynamic, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've never seen that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Regular, we didn't just see Paul take out Cann and
Everybody's
his daughter. I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Oh, sorry. Everybody just stuttered there for a second for me.
Oh, okay.
No worries. No worries.
Sorry about that. I think I caught everything you said though. It just stuttered for like a quick second.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say that his excuse doesn't really make sense when it comes to like, we need to show that rankers are so much more powerful than regulars, and then cut to the nest just a couple dozen chapters later, and there's regulars and rankers all hanging out in the nest.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine. And I also really dislike the Chang death because it is part of a running thing in the cage that completely kneecaps Paul's character. Paul not showing up for the vast majority of the nest isn't great, but even before then, his character gets kneecapped, where at the beginning of the nest, there's this moment where Paul's like, I need to risk my life. I need to fight for my people, for the canine people. But we just saw him, like, okay, kill Chang. Now that Chang has carried the team, Chang was the one that got the information for where the cage is for Paul's whole rebellion. So this whole plan to bring back Doom would have failed without Chang. So it's like sacrifice the most useful person who has helped us. But also, we see R&R's brother. They die. Paul doesn't care. Venti gets completely clapped by Berdych. Paul doesn't care. Paul doesn't care when
Jordan shoots off Paul's arm, and
when Tall gets taken down, or Death Lady takes down Grande. But all of those, you can argue, are like, that's a casualty of war. They're in battle against another high ranker. So of course that can happen. But when it's Chang, that's something that was completely preventable. Something that Paul was like, oh yeah, cool, just kill him now. So it really kneecaps his character when, at the beginning of Nest, as soon as I reacted to that chapter, I was like, since when does Paul care about the canine people? This has not been a thing
really
throughout the cage.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the last part that I have with the cage is something that I know when you all get to the cage you'll probably talk about too, is the Gado, Louis, and Dang Dang storyline has a pretty solid ending, in my opinion, but outside of the ending, it was not executed well at all. We pretty much never see Louis. Gado is, he's a bit disappointing, he's not the worst, but Dang Dang is hyped up as the savior of the canine people, this guy who could be the next Yama, and we don't see any of it. He's asleep with a missing heart for like the entire arc. We don't see why Dang Dang is important, and we don't spend enough time with Louis to really feel their connection. The entire storyline for me, outside of the ending because of what it does for Bomb as a character, just falls completely flat. So, yeah, that is my tearing apart of the cage. And I guess
I feel like I don't need to say anything.
Yeah, we're going to get to the cage, I'm just going to be like,
what Haku said.
I guess with that, we can move on to 11th place. So what's everybody got second to last?
Well, you know what? The Cage is 11th for me. Hey, yes.
The Cage is 11th for everyone? Wow. So yeah, any of you want to piggyback off of that and continue to tear apart the Cage?
Adding to what you were saying about the whole Gado, Louis, and Dang Dang, what it ultimately felt like to me was we needed Bomb to care for something, and this was like the crux of the issue that he was having, and I never really bought it because I felt like there were so many different other things we could have done with Bomb's character besides dying on the hill of no, Dang Dang can't die. And it was one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is just like kind of like casualty of war. It's just like, I gotta take this bullet so we can get to the end of this arc and we can move forward. But that was one of the main things that really was like, why do we keep going back and forth on this one thing when I feel like there's an alternative? There's a possible alternative outside of all of this. Why does everyone have to be so rigid? Why can't we be a little bit more fluid?
True, that's a very good point.
Yeah. I mean, I had the Chang thing written down, but I feel like you covered that really well, so I'm gonna move on from there. But I do, yeah. So like the introduction of Yama and like all these beloved characters is super great. But I think my main gripe, and I was thinking about this, is I think the entire canine plot is interesting, but I kind of wish it was introduced earlier, because like Yama was mentioned, like maybe like the mad dogs were mentioned a few times, but Yama himself was mentioned like during workshop.
Yeah.
That's kind of it, you know, when Chang talked about it for a little while. The canines, like as a term, were not mentioned like at all. But like I wish it was sort of set up a little bit, because then it would have been more exciting to actually reach that point, instead of just being like, well, this is season 3. We're gonna be spending all of our time on canines and Yama. Like, I don't know. I wanted some more build up there. But to not to like defend the Gato Louis Deng Deng thing, because I do agree that I think the ending does save it or salvage it to some extent. And I think it's a really good fake out. I talk about this sometimes because SIU is like, oh, canines can live without their hearts for like a little while. And we're like, oh, so Deng Deng's gonna live, you know, and he doesn't. I think that's a really good, like, no one expected Deng Deng to actually die, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's
I
true
think
too.
that's really interesting. Bomb didn't just like lose somebody, which at this point Bomb isn't used to losing people, really. He like broke his promise, and I actually do like the Bomb development there. I don't think it was perfectly handled, but I think it's a positive from the Deng Deng Gato plotline.
Right. I would say I agree with that too. And also, don't be afraid to retread anything that like anybody else has already said. Get your opinions in on whatever the arc is as well. So, Jesse, anything for the cage?
I think I have a largely different set of criticisms and defense points, actually. So I will say I do agree with around Bomb's presentation is not well handled for me. It's not necessarily that like any development he gets is bad there. It's that, and this is just something I have like throughout the entire season. I have trouble believing that any development the Bomb goes through will stick, because I feel like there are a lot of times he flip-flops on things. I'll definitely talk about that more when we get to the cage. But there, and I did like the moment that he had at the end where he realized that he like didn't really care about Deng Deng, and he kind of used him, and he didn't quite realize it at the time. I thought that was a really great moment for him. Yeah. In the beginning, I do think he was just a little weird. This might be a hot take. I just don't like his haircut. I wish he had the season 2 short hair back. I think he looks so much better.
Oh, I like the hair. I like the hair.
I like the hair too.
I need it to be a little bit longer.
Hair just fine, but this is like this half measure. It's not enough for me. But so the main issues that I have with the cage are, I think the main issue, I think Deng Deng isn't compelling. I agree with that. Bomb's stuff for a lot of it is weird. I don't like Yama. I think he's one of my least favorite characters in the story at this current moment. But I didn't like him back then either. And I actually, so here's one of, you know who one of my favorite characters was? One of my favorite characters was Tall. Because
oh my god, Tall!
Great moment in the Tall Jordan fight where Tall's like, I would rather, and I know you guys brought up a good point. There's really nothing to insinuate that Paul cares about making anything better for the Houndborn.
Yeah.
And now that I think about it, his only purpose in the story is to bring back a worse character. But the when he's like, I'd rather follow somebody who like listens to, or like who cares about his people, than somebody who just sleeps around during the festival. And I was like, dude, he's completely right, because I was so disappointed when Yama was built up as this like super imposing force and stuff, and his intro was great, but then he falls asleep and becomes a non-presence for like half the arc. I know that's what enables the coup, but that just felt like such a weak plot point to me. I will say I actually did like, I don't like Louis and Deng Deng very much. I do like the Gato and Cann conflict a lot. That actually, like, that's what saves the cage from being last place.
I agree with that, actually.
I've written, like, a Reddit essay on it, but I thought those two actually had a really good dynamic, and I think it presented really well. Because it's like, there's all this stuff going on in the background where like Bomb is just trying to win the game and beat Ranker so he can get Yama's support. That's not that investing for me because again, like I don't care that much about Jinsung and the cage is far off, or the nest is far off. But like for Gatto and Canns, and it was Gatto who was like trying to make it so like his son wouldn't be bullied for being a half-breed or something, which was like maybe weakly presented, but something that was understandable enough for me. Also, he was like super evil, so he like didn't really come off as that sympathetic. But then you also have like the moments between Kansan and his daughter, and those are really good for me. That moment is really good for me, and so like anytime those two went at it, like that's where like the heart of the cage was for me, and that's like what I was invested in, because I could really get it. Like I could really get behind like them actually trying to make life better for the canines along the way. And I think the fact that they kind of didn't by the end of it is a bleak but strong point about the arc. The other thing that I really don't like about it either is that I feel like it kind of devolves, and this is something that happens in a lot of season 3 as well, where we started with the festival, we started with the game, and I know it's supposed to be like, I know the point is supposed to be like things escalate so Bomb gets tougher and tougher fights. I really thought the mechanics of the game were cool. I liked how everyone was kind of running around and getting their like individual picks and stuff. And I was sad to lose that. And I really liked some of the stuff that happened in between it. Like the bomb fights were okay, but we had this really good thing going on with like Kuhn and Michael. I don't know what your guys' opinions are. I actually think Michael is hilarious in this.
I was gonna bring him up as a positive.
I really think a lot of that side character stuff did fall apart now that you mention it.
Yeah.
I think so. I think you're right about losing the test parameters. I think that's kind of for me a criticism of Tower of God maybe as a whole. Is it's like, oh, these are the test rules, and then 2 chapters in, we don't really follow those rules. So I think that can happen a lot with
the
Tower
rules
of
are
God
so complicated too.
Yeah. So sorry, continue.
Another thing that actually I'm surprised that none of us brought up talking about the cage, that I know, oh man, I don't have that strong of an opinion on it, but everyone else seems to hate it to varying degrees. The sweet fish / the firefish.
I was about to say it.
Really?
I
also dislike it heavily.
It's one. I think it might be outside of Rachel. It might be the most thing I hate in the series. I don't like it.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't.
I understand that a lot.
Yeah.
One of the worst for me, for sure.
I understand how it brings a different dynamic to Kuhn, and he's like supposed to be this cold individual and this cold character, and he gets something that's like the antithesis to what he is. But I feel like I would love to see him embrace more of what makes him a Kuhn, just to get more of it, because I feel like he'll thrive more instead of kind of like spamming the sweet fish in every single arc since he's gotten it. Like it's helped us with White. It's helped us with White again multiple times. It's helped us through so many situations, and it takes away like the complexity to like Kuhn's character of, I'm going to use my brain to try to figure this out instead of just.
Okay, can I counter that a little bit? Sorry.
Yes, please.
I just one example I think of in the cage that I think, because I think your points are valid, but I do think the sweet fish plus Kuhn's brains, like one great example that I love is when Verdici is fighting
cool too.
Grande. No, she's fighting.
Yes,
Venti.
I love that moment.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and he powers up Venti. And he's like, whoa, and he like furthers his transformation and then takes it away. Like, so I do think there are times when the brains and the fish meld.
Yeah.
But I do think it's used as a plot point a little too often since its introduction.
I have one more thing, and I will say I do consider the sweet fish a negative, but it's, I mean, besides Kuhn, getting revived just to get revived again, which was annoying.
Yeah.
The only other thing, the one other big thing, I didn't like Kel Helen.
Oh, man.
Haku.
Everybody hates Kel Helen, but I love him.
He's just there.
Gotten developed, but like when the cage started, he was just like another cocky ranker and just another wall for like Evan, Kel, and Han Sung. I think like a lot of the time, and Cage really sets this for me. Or Last Station did too, but Cage also does. Is sometimes I start to see characters less as actual like characters with motivations and stuff, and more as just obstacles for like people on bombs. side to fight, and that's what he felt like to me when he was introduced, and I was pretty disappointed with that up until the walls came around.
That's fair. Yeah.
All right. Well,
wait.
one thing...
Can I just bring up one more for defense
go
of the
for
cage? This is my last. This is the last thing I'll say on the cage. I do think one thing I really loved is it brought back a lot of older characters. It brought back Chang and Quattro. It brought back Apple Michael. It brought back Ghost from season 1.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it brought in Arcraptor's daughter. So I wanted to bring a defense with that. It brought in a lot of really old plot lines. So I got to give it that.
Oh, wait, I'll give it one more attack real quick, actually.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, God.
The ghost thing didn't go anywhere. I did not think there was a reason to bring him back, if that's what he was going to do.
That is true, but I also think it might just be a mysterious thing where, like, 100 chapters down the line, we can be like, oh, that's why he showed up there. So, like, I'm willing to give that some time.
I think it baits us a little bit because, like, I think the introduction of him using Shinwan Ryu made it more interesting because then he was like, "Whoa, what?" You know, and he could talk. So I do agree. It was like a bit of a little interesting thing to throw in there, and then just kind of vanish for later on. Maybe I don't know.
I will also say a positive. There were really some action moments that I did like. I love when Yama takes down Mule, the FUG Elder's envoy, and he's like flying away as this bomb or whatever, and then without even saying anything, Jordan snipes him out of the sky and is like, hey, I saw this weird thing, so I sniped it out of the sky for you, and Yama's just like, that's why I'm the king of the dogs and everything. I also really like Yama and Evankel versus Kelhelm. I enjoy it. And the stuff with the ancient spear being thrown. I actually like all of the action stuff at the end. Even the Bomb and Kanzone versus Gado stuff, where Bomb wasn't fast enough to keep up with Gado, but because he's an irregular, he can damage him. So it was all about Kanzone slowing him down enough that Bomb could get a hit off. So, yeah, all of that I really liked. And my opinion on the Sweet Fish, like I said, it's not as strong as everybody else's. But the one thing that I dislike about the Sweet Fish is that it takes away from the way that Kuhn has fought in the past, or especially the ice powers. Because we just got the ice powers, then immediately, as soon as we got them, Kuhn went full Sleeping Beauty. He was conked out for a while. As soon as he wakes up, nothing but Sweet Fish. That's basically all he does. He doesn't do lighthouse stuff very often anymore. He does a little bit. Same with the ice. Pretty much never uses it. It's pretty much been all Sweet Fish. So that's really, really my complaint. And now that you've torn apart your 11th place picks, my 11th place pick was The Last Station. Like I said, I didn't think anything would go lower than Last Station for me, but then Cage came around and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I do rate the Cage lower. For me, The Last Station fails as a climax to the Hell Train, and it's not even really a climax. So something that happens with pretty much any other part in the story is that we have... Oh, is everybody frozen? Or is everybody just quiet? Oh, God. But yeah, The Last Station fails as a climax. It's not even really a climax. Every other part in the story, Season 1 all builds up to the last examination, and that culminates all these plot points we have going on. Season 2, Before the Hell Train, all culminates. We have so many plot points introduced, and then they're all tied off. They all reach a climax at the workshop battle. Even Season 3, the first part of Season 3, all of these things that we're introduced to in the cage and the walls come to a head at the nest. The nest isn't as conclusive as I would have liked, but it does conclude a lot of the storylines we were presented up until that point. But the issue to me with The Last Station is that all of the plot points that we were introduced to in the Hell Train are concluded before we get to The Last Station. All of the stuff that's going on with Bomb and Andrasi and Kuhn and all of these other characters' development is kind of finished before The Last Station. The Last Station has good Miseng development, and while I wouldn't say it has good Yuri development, it does at least have Yuri screen time. She is at least doing things. So I would say those are positives, Miseng and Yuri. But yeah, most of the Hell Train plots are over before we get to The Last Station to begin with. And most of the characters that we're seeing in The Last Station are either new characters that we haven't built up, which is weird for it to be like The Last Station, the climax, but there's all these new characters that we don't know, or they're new to the role that they're playing, like Karaka and arguably White. Karaka and White just hadn't played the role that they played in Last Station before. So even though they're not new characters like we knew about them before, the same goes for Jinsung. Even though we knew about Jinsung before, he's never played that role in the story before that he played in the Last Station. So it just doesn't work to me as a climax. And also, again, Bomb's presentation isn't the best. It is a big... It's a big offender with something that I bring up a lot with Bomb, which is we have a lot of moments where we just have a Bomb doing things, everyone else standing around doing nothing, and a bunch of strong characters going, wow, look at him, he has so much potential. Wow, look at how cool he is. And it gets a bit old to me when Bomb is presented that way, where everyone's just standing around talking about how cool he is while he's doing things. I'm like, okay, we don't really need that.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
So I think it does have an issue there. And I will generally say my opinion since I read Last Station week to week hasn't changed. And that opinion was that this was really fun to read, but wasn't really well written. And that's still my opinion. Last Station is a fun arc to read, but not necessarily well written.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's my take on 11th place. So
Okay.
oh man, this one, I might get skewered for this one. What's everybody's 10th place?
Uh-oh. My 10th place is Last Station, so...
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, I'm looking at my list. Oh goodness. My 10th place is Revolution Road.
I
Okay.
have the hidden floor.
Wow, so many
Really?
different options. Hidden Floor is a real wild card. My 10th place
Yeah.
is Floor of Death. So
Okay.
we have very, very different opinions here. So I guess...
Can I jump in on Last Station since you were just talking about
yeah,
it
absolutely.
as well? Okay. Since it's fresh in my mind.
Right.
So I do agree with what you're saying. I think so one of my criticism or one of my ways of critiquing the different arcs was I was trying to think of like best moments. I was trying to think of like
Right.
if I spend like 15 seconds thinking about this, how many top tier moments happen in the arc? And I was surprised actually because at first I was like, there's nothing much chat, but actually there's a lot for me with Last Station to its defense, and I think that's why it is fun to read, right? You have Jinsung versus Caliban, which is in my opinion one of the best fights in the series. You have White achieving his full complete form, which is sick. You have Evankel's introduction and the whole thing there with Han Sung, Elaine's reintroduction, Bomb getting the Black March again, which is like such an iconic moment because he hasn't had it since season 1, you know, and Mistang moment. So like I think it has some really fun moments, but like you said, it's just fun. I think the substance was lacking. Like you can look at characters like Levy, you can look at characters like the three, like the ruler of the Last Station and like his two adopted children.
yeah,
that plot line, like it's whatever, but that, you know, it feels like it's so forgettable. You know, it was so forgettable, and it's like I feel like the side characters. You've mentioned this, Haku, like Sachi and Boro and Wangnan. They all get like captured, and that's it. They serve zero purpose throughout the entire thing, and then it ends the season, and then Boro and Sachi leave, and Wangnan leaves, and it's a little disappointing in that regard too. So those are my thoughts on Last Station.
especially
about
for
Dorian
Wangnan.
Frog.
Dorian Frog is top tier.
Yeah.
He saved the arc for sure.
I will say
I like El Pathion a lot too.
Yes!
I will say
Yes.
I
And
forgot.
Sharon too. Yeah.
Oh, I love Sharon. I forgot until you
Sharon is
mentioned it.
Yeah.
But I always love the moment where full-powered White steps out of the Hell Train for the first time.
Yeah.
I always love
Yes.
that moment.
Oh, and Water Jelly also.
Oh yeah,
Can't
Water
forget
Jelly,
about
of
Water
course,
Jelly.
of course.
Yeah.
Lots
Okay,
of
just making sure.
great new characters. So yeah, for I guess whoever wants to go into their 10th place justification, you can go for it. Whoever wants to take the floor.
I'll do mine because mine was just I got to 10 and realized I hadn't picked it yet.
Right.
I don't have any reason why I have it that low because when I think back on it, it all in my brain culminates to the push again. And I remember like the emotions I felt, and I'm like, that feels like it should be higher. But then I'm like, there's so many other moments and so many other arcs that I feel like I like more. that it just kept falling down. Like I was like, Revolution Road might be 5, and I was like, no. I was like, could it be 6? No.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, it's here. I was like, it's not worse than these two for sure. So I stuck it there. But I really love just the whole the oh gosh, the fighting in the terminal leading up to the staircase with Daniel and everything you learn with him good. And all the angel stuff.
Yeah.
It's all just really well done. I love just the build that you get, and then you get Wang Nan with his Pokeballs again.
Oh man, yes,
it's so good. Yes. It's so good. I just hate that I had to put it here.
I feel like that's how Floor of Death ended up here with me too.
Yeah.
So anyone else, or I guess I can go with Floor of Death. So early Floor of Death, incredible, absolutely love it. Floor of Death and The Nest were both difficult to rate for me because I genuinely believe that they both have some of the best moments in the entire series. And they also both genuinely have some of my least favorite things in the entire series.
Yes.
So I love the Bomb and Hockney stuff at the very beginning. Their friendship building, getting introduced to Mata. I thought all of that was incredible. Getting introduced to Garam. And then we have the most significant lore drop in the entire series in Floor of Death.
Yes.
We also have the Heljo and Yurik storyline, which I actually like, especially the ending. I feel like the ending to that's really well written and like really emotional. And the same goes with Mata at the end, is really emotional, really well written. But then we get to the back half. The back half, to me, is really poorly paced. I thought reading it week to week, I was like, wow, this is not paced very well to me. And then even going back and rereading it, I'm just like, wow, the back half of Floor of Death drags to me. Like, I like it. I like the Bomb and Yurik and Heljo stuff, but it drags. And the hugest problem is that the side character content is extremely disappointing. I think Rachel's pretty good in this arc. The like rivalry where she's like, no, I have to compete against Bomb here. And the stuff she does to try to save Kuhn's group from Grand Ali, all of that stuff with Rachel was interesting. But yeah, the stuff with Kuhn's group, when they introduced Heljo's minions, I'm like, oh, that's cool. We have Heljo's minions for our characters to maybe fight against or something. But then Heljo's minions do nothing. They do nothing the entire arc. One of them just gets taken out by Heljo himself when he tries to run away, I think. Song just escorts White and Karaka until he gets knocked out when White absorbs the souls. Charlotte does absolutely nothing. So yeah, they really don't contribute, and because they don't contribute, I know it was something that me and other Joe during the 24-hour stream were arguing and joking about. Sachi just builds bridges. Sachi just builds bridges. That's all he's got. Kuhn's group really doesn't do much of anything either. We even get the cool stuff with like the Red Witch Gallstone Village stuff, which I really, really like, and then that doesn't really particularly go anywhere either. So it's like, it has some of the best stuff ever, with the lore drops, with the Bomb and Hockney stuff, but then it also just has some stuff like the side character content's just really, really weak, and the pacing's not great, and it's an arc that I genuinely like, but I feel like issues like that are what knocked it down to 10th for me.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, anybody else?
I'll go.
Oh, right.
Wait, actually, I have a question, Haku. This will affect my ranking. Are we putting in, since you didn't mention it, are we putting the Wang Nan arc in NHS? I had it in FOD for my ranking.
Yeah.
I guess you can put it in either Name Hunt Station or Floor of Death, right? Doesn't it go between the two?
It's literally.
Yeah.
I would kind of put it more towards Floor of Death, but you could put it in either, I think.
All right.
Depending on how you divide things mentally.
Yeah. I don't know yet. But Hidden Floor. I think until like right before we started, I had Hidden Floor at the bottom. It's my favorite arc to like hate on. And it was the first arc. It was the first time where I was reading Tower of God weekly at that point that I was like, I don't enjoy any of what's happening here, and I can't wait for this arc to be done. And it was really, it was sad to me too. I really think it was just an arc of missed opportunity. I think it has the greatest start to an arc in Tower of God. Like, I think when they get sucked into the floor and they talk about the history of it, it is absolutely phenomenal. And then that mythos, that it just gets lost in it just gets lost in bets and training and a gamified world, which is really disappointing to me. I think a controversial opinion I have in this, I actually do, and I just complained about gamification, but I like the first half of it better. I think the first half has more substance to it,
Interesting.
which is, and I classify that as before they meet Data Jihad. So the stuff with, like, my favorite part of it is, well, my favorite part's the ending, actually. And I'll, in my little defense, I'll talk about that. But the stuff I liked about it is the arc with Bawss and Bomb and Quarantine. I think Andrasi and, I say Andrasi, I think Andrasi and Bomb and Han Sung is a somewhat interesting pairing. I wish it was explored a little bit more rather than just Bomb kind of giving Han Sung mean looks and it doesn't really matter. But Bawss is kind of the Kanzan of the arc to me, where he's like the heart of the arc. Like, I really identified with like his conflict and like him trying to get, you know, his robot brothers out of quarantine and him and his feudal struggle against the big breeders. Like, that was where I could really root for Bomb, because, and like, since Hell Train, since he got on the Hell Train, Bomb like has always been like liberating people. And like he liberates the guys on the train when he fights White. He liberates the people in NHS, kinda. If he liberates the people in Floor of Death, kinda, and then he liberates the people in Hidden Floor. Except I really like in Hidden Floor, where he comes into like the middle of this conflict, and they're not getting anywhere, but they are, like, the people there have already taken it into their own hands. So it's a really cool instance of like things are going on around Bomb. And Bomb does take an active role, and he acts as the catalyst for them, but the conflict is already there. It was a good piece of world building. Hidden Floor in general does have pretty cool world building. I love the Yura arc. This arc, I didn't like Yura that much, but like before Hidden Floor, I was okay with her. This arc made her like my third favorite character in the series. I thought just the way I remember reading an SIU blog post where he said he wanted to give Yura's conflict more time, but just really couldn't find it. And I was like, yeah, dude, I get it. I get it, because that hit for me. Like, all this stuff about, like, the data humans wanting to be real and stuff, I think that was a really cool conflict. It also played into a really big idea I had about just, like, a theory I have in general, kind of a headcanon, where, like, Tower people are fake. Like, they have agency, but they're, like, they can't exist outside the Tower. That's, like, it plays in the whole thing. I ended up thinking it, like, once White was introduced and he used people's souls and stuff, but that's where and the ending of Hidden Floor was amazing. I think the introduction of Big Data Jihad is incredible. I think Wang Ning grabbing the sword is incredible, and it's maybe it is one of my favorite moments in the series. Everything else about Hidden Floor I hate.
Wow.
I think Aguero is pretty boring in it the whole time. Something I'll say is we talk about Aguero needing to embrace his strengths more, and I agree with that to an extent. But I actually do. One thing I really liked about Aguero is that he was climbing the tower his own way. He was making his own rules. And that was a little harder for him than to embrace his natural talents, which isn't that bad in of itself. But I think him relying more on ice powers and like relying more on being a spear bearer took away from what made Aguero a really special character to me so early on, which was like just how he just not made up, but like chose his completely own style, completely free style of fighting with the light bearing. And it just played upon his natural intelligence. Like, I'll always be in the camp that'll say Aguero doesn't need any power-ups. I think he will always have a way. As long as SIU can think of something, Aguero can think of something. And I think part of that was, I think Enakor was a good way to play into his natural light-bearing abilities, but here, like the ice stuff, it wasn't as bad as Firefish, but I still think it took away from what made him special, just agreeing with his father, even though he...
Oh, I think everybody froze.
That's another thing I didn't like about Hidden Floor. Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say, Haku?
I think everybody froze up for a second, but I
Oh,
I think we're all good.
frozen.
Ron, I think
I-
your camera might be
Oh,
frozen.
yeah,
now.
Ron's frozen.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
dear.
frozen.
I can hear you.
Oh,
Like it's, well, I
yeah.
can see you. You're just not.
We can hear you.
I'm gonna try something.
Okay,
Okay.
but I think
good.
N1 was also a real missed opportunity. Like I think we like the Coon family is the family that we know the most about, and it would have been so amazing to see really how the dynamic between Aguero and him would work. And I was really sad to see that Aguero just ignores him, and they kind of ignore each other pretty much the entire time. Like the only real interaction they get is like, you're not that strong, but you're a little bit talented. And then he gets the ice powers, which is I also think it was a really big misstep to have a training arc in there in the first place. Like, we could have learned so much more about the floor and so much more about the past. I understand that SIU didn't want to give too much away. It maybe even could have been a good idea while Bomb and stuff were training, we spent even more time than we did focusing on what other characters were going through. I know that SIU chose to devote a lot of that time to, like, Asensio's group and Macheni fighting the other big breeders, but I also didn't think that there was a lot of heart there because they were really just gearing up to help Bomb fight Jihad, which was kind of... I feel like there was not a strong reason there in the first place beyond it was Jihad, but we could have gotten a lot more there. We could have gotten a lot more with Wang Nan, who was completely ignored. And also, I think Rachel was a big missed opportunity as well. I think the Icarus thing would have been a really, really cool... It would have been really cool if Rachel got kind of a fresh start with Icarus. I think one of the greatest things about having her go through that transformation is that nobody recognized her, and she could have, like, it would have been such a cool experience to see what life would have been like for her if she could have, like, climbed like with them for a little bit. And she really doesn't interact with them that much. I know she has, like, a very intrinsic hatred towards all of them, but it was still just a big missed opportunity to have them, like, half trust her, and she's just kind of doing her own thing, and most importantly, completely loses sight of her goal. Like, her goal was to get the thorn. Her goal was to get the thing that Jihad, like, was hiding there so that she could get the thorn. And that just goes away. She doesn't even mention that for the most part after getting into the floor, and just goes after her own body. So the conflict between Bomb and Rachel that they had going into the arc was just lost completely, and the conflict that comes up after is on a completely different subject, which brings me to my last big criticism of the Hidden Floor, besides Data Jihad having bad drip, is that Rachel kills Aguero, at the one time where I think it wasn't justified or, like, deserved. It was the one time where Aguero wasn't actively antagonizing her. If she did it in Dowler Show, if she did it in Name Hunt, if she was there, if she did it in Floor of Death, all would have made total sense to me. In Hidden Floor, I get that she can get the drop on him, but that was the one time he wasn't doing anything to her. And I'm like, this just sucks. I'm like, this is just petty to me. And that's, you can argue that's part of who Rachel is.
Yeah.
But I've always, and especially in Floor of Death, bringing it out too, I've always been a believer in Rachel really being able to focus on the bigger things. And Hidden Floor is the start of having that taken out of her character. That's why I dislike Hidden Floor a lot, even though it has some strong points.
Interesting. It's interesting bringing up, like, Rachel seeing the big picture. I mean, I can see that. So you're saying that she gets more petty as the series goes on.
I think after
losing
Floor of
that
Death specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that. I mean, I do think she does have a bit of a petty streak. I think of is the dance scene early on in season 2, where she's like, "Oh, you should be my legs," and he's like, "No," and she cuts up his legs because of it, and she's like, "Oh, how dare you!" Like, that to me shows that she's always been a little petty.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that does become much more expanded on later on. So,
I think I have a bit of a different interpretation of that scene too. Where I think
Okay.
honestly, I think Dan pushed her to. I've heard people say that they think that I've heard people say that they think she did that to spare his life so Apple and Michael wouldn't kill him. That was like the only way she convinced them not to.
Nah.
I don't really believe that myself. I just think that Dan pushed her to the absolute limit at that point.
Wait, really? Like, so,
Yeah.
I mean, Dan just said, no, use your own damn legs, whatever, right? Like, so are you saying it was just like really personal to her?
I think
and
it
that's
was
what?
extremely personal to her.
Okay,
at that
okay.
point. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like we could make a
Will-
whole video talking about Rachel.
I will say,
Yeah.
I disagree with a lot of your takes, but I also agree with a lot of them. Especially what you said was an unpopular opinion, which I definitely share. Oh God, is everybody
Yeah,
I think
frozen?
you're stuttering.
Sorry.
Haku is robot mode.
Oh gosh, now I forgot what I was saying. Oh no.
You were saying you agreed, but also disagree.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
You
Something that
disagree with a
everybody,
lot.
or something that you said was an unpopular opinion. Everybody likes to hate on early hidden floor. I really like early hidden floor, and I think one of the problems is that we don't spend enough time developing early hidden floor. So, yeah, that's actually why it's one of my highest rated ones, because I don't really share a lot
Yeah.
of your criticisms, but I also share the opinion that the early part was good, and we should have gotten, like, that more in depth. But also,
For sure.
I wanted to say that Rachel did get the Fitbit, by the way. I am still team Bomb owes Rachel the second Thorn fragment. She won that bet.
He did
You mentioned
She
that
did
the
in
other
the
day.
latest chapter.
Yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
mentioned that the other day.
Yeah, I guess that means we're each going to our 9th place choices, and mine
Okay.
is Revolution Road.
Okay, I don't feel bad.
Same. Revolution Road's at 9 for me
Wow.
too. Yes.
I don't feel bad now. I don't feel bad.
All right, so
I feel like I might feel bad with my 9th place. Return of the Prince.
wow,
Yeah,
Ooh.
that's a crazy one. Wow,
I know. Return of the Prince is my 9.
Man, I have the nest.
That's
Oh,
fair.
there it is.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I can't even. Yeah.
I can't.
That's probably
I
not
can't
too
do
off
that,
from
yeah.
me. So, yeah, anybody want to go first with their review?
Well,
I'll
yeah. Go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
go. So,
Yeah.
for me, since I'm the lone person that started reading after the anime, I felt like it was the perfect continuation from what I was watching. Because at first, starting off, like you introduced the Wangnan and everything at the 20th floor, and then this individual veal that could be bomb that you're not sure, that you're kind of playing with, and I love all of it. And it's like I really don't have a negative for the Return of the Prince. I feel like it was a perfect stepping off point into what would then become a lot of my favorite moments. It has the introduction to Sweet and Sour, and I love all of them. Getting to see Mazino for the first time, leading through all of that, heading all the way up to the Devil's Right Arm, and the culmination in the first time between Bomb and Kun seeing each other post the Floor of Tests. I just love it all, but it kind of is like, for me, how I view it, the springboard and the great foundation to like what makes me fall in love with Tower. God,
I can feel that.
because like I love
Oh,
like
sorry, you're starting to. Everybody's
It's like
starting
that
to warp
was-
out for me.
certain arc, and then I fell in love, and it's kind of like it's like a foundation that I can stand
No,
on.
you're
I'm like,
good. I
So
think
all
good
of
for
this-
me.
oh no,
Yeah.
okay,
Haku.
Oh, sorry.
okay. So it's like
I think he's back.
it's like the foundation where I can build all of my love for the rest of the series on. So it's like those moments and those other arcs and characters that I then get introduced to, I love more. But it's like, if it wasn't for this, I don't know how much appreciation I would have for those arcs.
Okay.
It's like,
True.
I hate to put it this low, but I feel like my love for the other ones are so high.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually.
I actually, yeah. For me, 9 and onward, I don't actually have that much criticism. Like, I feel like I had a
It's all
lot of criticism
intangible.
yeah, 10 to 12, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, these are for sure the bottom 3. But these ones, I feel like I could reread the series and these will
Yeah.
probably change.
That's how I felt too.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess I'll go next. So for me, it's Revolution Road. And that's because for me, Revolution Road is just like setting up Dollar Show, which spoilers is like, I love Dollar Show. I feel like it does such a good job at being a setup arc, but by itself, it's not like anything crazy. I feel like the Yura plot line wasn't perfect. Like she's kind of like the main antagonist of the Revolution Road, and I feel like SAU could have done a better job of making her more interesting. Because I agree with Jesse that Hidden Floor is when I started to really like Yura, but like Revolution Road, she's just like, haha, I have a suitcase and like bomb this and that, and Rachel, it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't really, it's not anything crazy.
Yeah.
I think it does a really, I think it shines with the minor side characters though, because we get introduced to the game that they play with Yura, where they're passing around the ball and everything, is actually really good for characters like Han Wukong and Hana Yu, and I just like Boro throughout this entire segment, and Hua Ryun as well. And the best part of the arc is the ending. I think when they get to the very top and Wang Nan and Iwa with Kun, like that's like such a good moment. Like when they out of that elevator, I mean, just thinking about it gets me so excited. And like Wang Nan actually being like super competent and like working with Iwa to trap Kasano, that's so great. And then the push 2.0, the famous, the reenactment is, I think all that stuff is so solid. And ending 2 with Kun throwing the white heavenly mirror into the train, all of that stuff is really, really good. So I don't really have that much to critique about it. It's just setup. So I can't really give it that many props aside from the ending.
True. So, oh wow. For me, I'm just going to jump in because I also had Revolution Road in 9th. So I think for me, with Revolution Road, the ending carries it, and that's why I put it this low. Is just because, to me, the ending carries it. I think the ending is when we all did our, top 3 moments in the series or whatever, I put the ending to Revolution Road, because I love how we have all of this really, really, really cool stuff. And it all ends with Bomb making it back up to Rachel. She pushes him in the exact same way she did at the end of Season 1, completely mirroring Season 1. As he's falling, we get this flashback that I absolutely love, because he's talking to Rachel, saying, "You're like an angel who came down to me, but if I go up, can I meet more angels like you?" And then he's saved by Beta, who was literally just his enemy at Workshop Battle, and Beta saves him while having the hands come out of his back like angel wings. And we see the shot as Beta's saving him, with all of Bomb's other friends, from the old ones like Kun to the new ones like Boro, all watching as Beta saves him. So we see that, like what Bomb said in the flashback, if I go up, can I meet more angels like you? We have his friends save him. It's such an incredible moment after Rachel's the one who pushes him down. It's so good. And really, the back half in general is really good. I like all the fighting stuff, like Boro versus Danwa, seeing what Boro can do. Waryun getting defeated by Angel. We've got Bomb versus Daniel, I really, really liked. Again, you mentioned all the stuff up on the platform is really good. So yeah, I like all of that. I'm not the hugest fan of the Muradic Guardian stuff, but I love Muntari, so I mean, there's that. The issue, and also I might be in the minority who loves the new characters introduced. I like Hanul King. I love Hana Yu. So sad that we didn't get more Hana Yu. I love the new characters we were introduced to. Akka's great there. I love Muntari, I just said. But there were pacing issues. There were definitely pacing issues, and like I said before we started recording, when I was talking about how long we had each been reading for, I've been reading week to week since around the end of Season 1, maybe beginning of Season 2. It was around the Rachel twist, and the only one time where I was like, I've got to take a break from Tower of God, was during Revolution Road. like mid-Revolution Road, and we had just come off like a 5-month hiatus or something between Workshop Battle and Revolution Road, and so we had just kind of gotten back into Tower of God, and I was so excited for it, but we got like halfway through Revolution Road, and I was like, I need to take a little bit of a break. So yeah, that's, like, I know Jesse just mentioned that for him being Hidden Floor, for me that was Revolution Road, where it was the first time where I was like, I need to take a little bit of a break. But yeah, that was all of my thoughts on Revolution Road. So Jesse, you're 9th place.
Yeah, so I have the Nest. I think there's a, since it just finished, I think there's like a ton to talk about with it. But I'll also say I agree with Joe, or I think all of us, where like everything like below this point, there was like a lot of bad stuff we could say about it. And then like from here on out, it's like all okay, or like at least okay, or good, or better.
Yes.
Nest averages out to me at an okay. There's a ton of stuff I have to like criticize about it, but there's also a ton of stuff in it that I think is phenomenal. I think Nest also has some of my favorite moments in the series, but also some of my least favorite.
Same.
So I think it starts off on kind of a mediocre note with like the Charlie fight. Like everything in the first wall, I think is like decent. It's like the Charlie fight. Like I continue to be disappointed in Charlie after what I thought was a great introduction. And like the Charlie fight, it was like whatever. Huarian's guiding Bomb, which is nice. Yeah. Bomb has kind of a flip-flop moment where he has this "don't look away" thing, which again I wish I could get invested in, but I just couldn't believe in him. And then I was proven right like 10 chapters later, where he puts himself on a pedestal when he's confronting Caliban. And at least I was able to think Caliban was really cool in that moment. So I think it ends up being okay. There's some cool stuff between Cha and Dewan. There's some good stuff with Kel Hellam and his backstory. And Elpathion stuff is good. Kuhn has a really good fight, in my opinion. I like a lot of what Aguera does in the Nest. Then we get the hiatus and we come back to Cat Tower. I think Cat Tower's phenomenal. Like the crab game, whatever. But like the flashbacks, the fights, just every conflict, that's the new Dollar Show to me. That was like, it was set up kind of the same way, and I love almost everything that happens in it. It even ends with a Bomb versus White fight, which was, for the most part, so much better than the one that we actually got in Dollar Show. That's still, even with the way it ended, it's one of my favorite fights in the series.
Whoa!
Cosine.
Wow!
Of course, once Aguero enters the battlefield, I could tolerate Rack. We knew about the observation platform already. Once Aguero enters the battlefield for that, everything goes downhill for me. Goes to like one of the lowest lows I have for Tog, and I just cannot get invested for the rest of the arc until Traumare comes in. And he's pretty good. Ends a little bit lackluster as he doesn't really do anything. And we also get the Yasracha flashback, which could have been a great culmination of all the other flashbacks. And it starts out pretty good, and then it focuses on things I don't want it to focus on. And so ultimately, Nest ends on kind of an average note for me.
I very much agree. I don't really want to say too much because it's next for me, but I definitely agree where, like I said at the beginning, the Nest and Floor of Death were both hard to rank because for both of them, they have some of my favorite stuff in the series and some of my least favorite stuff in the series, so I'm there too. So any of you have anything before we move on to 8th place? All right, well, 8th place for me is the Nest, so what's everybody else got?
Oh, okay.
This one's going to be... Oh,
8th for me is Floor of Death.
I also have Floor of Death.
Okay.
Oh, boy. This one's going to be a shocker. Season 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really think that's
Season
that bad.
1.
I actually am with you on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to go first with Season 1 then?
I can go first with Season 1. Season 1, it's something during, I want to say, like, the last couple of weeks that, like, as we're getting closer into another hiatus, where someone asked something, and I was really thinking, and I was like, Season 1, it's I have like this weird thing because I have like a mixture of the anime and what I read in my brain. So it's like
Yeah.
when I think of season one, I think of the anime. But then when someone asks me about specific moments, excuse me, like that aren't in the anime, I see the series playing in my brain, like CU's artwork.
Right.
So it's like one of those weird mixtures where I'm like, I might have to read it like a bunch of times to kind of like separate the two.
True.
And it's the thing that got me into the series, and I love it a lot. But it's one of those things where I feel like I need to reread it a few more times so I can properly rank it. So it's one of those, but I don't think I can say anything bad about season one. I feel
Yeah.
like there's a critique in everything, but sitting here right now, I don't think I can say anything bad about season one.
Yeah, I can
It's a
feel
great
that.
introduction to what the series is. It isolates you. It isolates these characters, introduces a power structure, and trickles you information that you'll then expound upon once you start to climb. And I feel like it's a great precursor to what eventually is the rest of Tower of God. Like the ending opens it up so beautifully.
Yeah.
Right. I think your perspective is really, really, really good on season one as well, because you're the only one of us who watched the anime first and then got to read it afterward and see the differences,
Yeah.
see some of the things that were changed, some of the things that were left out. You kind of have your own unique sort of view on it there, and just you've seen it twice in two different ways.
Yes.
And you're the only one who has experienced the anime first to get that experience first, like in actual motion.
Right.
So that's interesting. And I feel like, of all of us, I feel like Joe probably has the heaviest season one knowledge because of the dub. I like to think I know a little bit, but I think he
I was gonna
probably
say, I
has the
feel like
heaviest
you definitely.
knowledge of season one. But yeah, since you two both had the same 8th place, I'll do the nest really quick. So yeah, like the nest I mentioned before, has some of my favorite things in the series, some of my least favorite things. I think the Yasracha flashback is incredible. I do think towards the end, you're right, it does kind of go off the rails a little bit. But the beginning, the first 2 chapters of it especially, carry it enough for me that I feel like the first 2 chapters of the Yasracha flashback are 2 of the best chapters in the entire series. There's a long list of the series' best fights in the nest. I think that White versus Caliban 2 is possibly my favorite fight in the series. I have seen people complain about them, but I absolutely...
No. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You
Alright.
all good?
Alright, you're good.
Are we good?
No, you're good. You're
We're
back.
good.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I've seen people complain about them, but I absolutely, absolutely love Yu Han-sung versus Hiracha and Cha and Hatsu versus Kendrick. I
Yes.
love the full flashbacks, the long chapters we got with those, the full fight. I really like the Hasacha and Hachonhi chapter. I find that really fun. So yeah, it just has a long list of the series' best fights. I love the stuff with Kuhn and the Windbird and everything back at the first defensive wall. I really like another fight that I think doesn't get a ton of attention, Bomb and Karaka versus Caliban, where
Yes.
Bomb, because he's an irregular, he can damage Caliban, but he's like, wow, if I get hit, I'm completely screwed. Whereas
Yeah.
Karaka tries to hurt him, but can't break through his defense. But Karaka constantly has to jump in the way or pull Bomb out of the way. So we get this really cool fight where Karaka's playing, they're like basically working as one unit, with Bomb being
and
the
shield.
attack and Karaka being the defense. And I actually really like that fight. I think Ha Jinsung versus Perditi and Holan is brilliant. I absolutely love that. So again, just a long list of some of the series' best fights. I think the side character content, or the side characters in general, are treated with the most respect that they're
Yes.
treated in potentially any part in the entire series. Just the way that Yuan Sung is treated, the way that Cha and Hatsu are treated. I feel like so many of the side characters are just treated really well in the nest, where it's like the opposite of Floor of Death, where they get thrown to the background, or Last Station, where they're all tied up the entire arc. The side characters are treated really well. We have so many chapters that don't even have Bomb in them because we're focusing on the side characters. And some people dislike that, but I absolutely love that. We also get like we get fun new characters. Like, I mean, Sophia Tan's kind of new, I guess. But we get like Cobalt, which I love. We get Perdita and Holen. We get so many really, really great new characters.
LaFave.
Yeah, LaFave. Oh, I love LaFave.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we also get a lot of great returns. Like, who would have thought Mule Love returning? Not just Mule Love, but Gus, even though we don't get to see much of him. Like, we get to see returns, we get to see new characters. I think all of that is great. But the negatives I have with the Nest are that I do wish, now that it's over, I can say that I think I wish it was a bit more conclusive. Like, it's much better than, say, Last Station, but when I compare it to something like Workshop Battle, there are a lot of plot points, like especially the Yusracha plot point's a very good one, that go into the Nest and get concluded in the Nest. We get this big climax, but there's also a lot that, like, I don't know, we had Jinsung and Calavan there. They had their huge fight and everything, and they didn't really interact whatsoever. Everybody goes their separate ways, which is a cool, fun ending, but I don't know, like the stuff with Yusracha and Yama, I don't feel like I'm okay with Yusracha still being alive, but I also don't feel like it was conclusive, or as conclusive as it could have been. And there are a bunch of other plot points like that too, where I'm like, I love the Nest, but I do think it could have been more conclusive with what we had got earlier in Season 3. I don't think that Bomb is fully handled well. There are moments where I think he's handled really well. I love right after he captures Leviathan, and he immediately rushes in to go save Jinsung, because that was his plan. That was the whole reason we did the whole thing, was so that he could go save Jinsung. So I love that. That's immediately the first thing he did. I love the Bomb and Karaka stuff. One moment that I see people gloss over, and even see a lot of people dislike, is when Bomb uses the bow and arrow to save all, like, the canines and all of his friends, basically. But I actually love that, because going back and rereading it, because of Kunhin Luck's sacrifice, we get Kunhin Luck's side of the flashback, but we also get another side of the flashback that Kunhin Luck wasn't even there for while Bomb is doing the bow and arrow thing. And that's Kelhelm's flashback. We see Kelhelm losing everything, trying to take down Zahard, and realizing that Zahard can see further in the future than he can. And we see Kelhelm's failure and him losing all of his friends. And then Bomb doing what he does time and time again, copying Kelhelm's technique with the teleporting arrow right after we get that flashback, and saving his friends with that technique. And I actually think that's a really, really good moment that even I underrated, but going back and rereading it and realizing that we get the Kelhelm flashback as Bomb is saving people, I think really elevates that scene for me. So there are times when Bomb is handled well, but there are times when he's not, which apparently puts me at odds with some of you when I say I thought Bomb vs. White was awful. I thought it was possibly the worst moment in the series. I feel like the choreography was all right, but the story behind it, I just felt like it came at completely the wrong place. Because Bomb stays behind to fight against White, and he finds out that he killed Prince and Ackraptor or whatever, which I blame more on Rachel anyway, but whatever.
Same thing.
But he gets mad at White, and he can't beat him. And he basically says to Arya that he knows he can't beat him, but he has to stay behind and fight. But this entire thing was about Jinsung. It was about saving Jinsung. Bomb had the entire moment, like Jesse mentioned, where he was looking at the bodies and he's like, no, I have to stay strong, I have to do this. But then when it comes down to it, when he can go through the teleporter and get to Jinsung, he doesn't. He stays behind to fight White. And I don't dislike that about Bomb's character, but I dislike that CU put Bomb in that situation writing wise, because I feel like this entire White thing, again, why did White confront Bomb about this here specifically? I feel like this could have waited until after the Nest, and I feel like its placement is what really, really hurts it for me.
I mean, he brought it up to stop Bomb from teleporting, right? Yes. So, I mean, technically, I don't know. I feel you.
But why, why try to attack Bomb here in the middle of the battlefield at the Cat Tower?
No, that's true. That is 100% true. That came out of nowhere.
I feel like the point of it, it comes down to the point of having these two in a party together and how counterproductive it will eventually be. You have two characters that are so focused on goals that they need to do, and his goal has specifically been Bomb for a long time.
True.
And because he's been getting powered up throughout the arcs and he keeps tasting more and more power, it gets to the point of how much longer can you hold this beast off? And it kind of like his ego, it's the same thing that happens in the Floor of Death, where it takes someone extremely powerful to completely humble him and shut it down. There's no one there anymore that can do that. So now he's just able to run free. So I feel like the moment, it could have come a little later, but there was nothing that could have stopped it at that point, and it was just those two alone. And White feels like he could have dealt with the ramifications once we got out of the Cat Tower with anyone else that had an issue with it, if he were successful in devouring Bomb. So I feel like that's the moment he chooses.
And I actually do kind of like the hypocrisy of Bomb being like, I must be strong, but then the second he finds out, because if you really think about it, I'm pretty sure this is like I feel like this is the first time in the series that Bomb has actually lost someone close to him. Like, it's always been like side minor people like Muntari or whoever, like, that he doesn't actually care about. Prince and Arcraptor, like him finding out about Prince and Arcraptor, because they died a long time ago. He's finding out about it now. I can't think of someone who really like these people were like family to him for so long. And so him going from like gotta be strong to cracking like that, I actually think that is a positive for the White and Bomb fight. But I do agree with you.
Like, they save him.
Yes.
In early season 2, they're the reason why he's back to being Bomb and not completely falling straight into FUG.
I do have a lot of criticism of the fight, but I do like that moment.
Also, I did forget something. Even though I just talked about how much I can't stand the Bomb and White fight, whenever it is brought up, I always bring up all the things I dislike about it, but I also bring up my defense of it. So while I think it did come at completely the wrong time, one thing that I love about it is Joaquin's character development throughout it. Joaquin has really, really good character development in the Bomb and White fight, in the sense that we get these flashbacks, and in the beginning of the fight, like, he could totally kill Bomb. He comes close to doing it multiple times, and he's like, literally, he like cuts through his hands, he's like, come on, what are you doing? He slashes him, he's like, what are you doing? And he's specifically trying not to kill Bomb. He doesn't want to beat Bomb. He even says he doesn't want to beat Bomb. He just wants to corrupt him. And then we see his flashbacks, and we have... Sorry, I just thought of it. I just thought of the line where he says, I hate counting to 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
I hate counting. Sorry, that distracted me.
Yes.
That completely derailed me. But I love when he's like, you know, I felt something when I had to kill people at first. You know what I feel now? I don't feel anything. And then, like, we get into this flashback seeing how he just wanted to surpass R.E.A. Hone, and over time he was like, well, gotta corrupt myself to do it, and then he starts killing people, and he goes through all of this, corrupting himself. He doesn't want to be the way that he is, and this is something that we've built on for a long time, where in Dollar Show, he was just this arrogant god who was like, I'm a god, I've made all these people kill each other, and then he gets humbled by Bomb, and we get his first flashback showing why he is the way he is, something that we didn't know until after his defeat. And then throughout the Floor of Death, throughout the late bits of Hell Train, he keeps seeing the way Bomb does things. He's like, well, at least this guy does things in a good way. And then Rachel will say things, and he'll be like, really? Really? This is the way you do things? So we see him, like, slowly growing to, like, not like the way that Rachel does things, like the way, or at least respect the way that Bomb does things more. And we get to the point where last station, early season 3, he becomes an ally to Bomb. And then eventually he reaches this point where he's like, it's not fair that you get to have this power to surpass a family head without corrupting yourself when I had to... It's such a thing that you see in a bunch of other stories and even in real life where it's like, I had to do all of this to get to this point. It's not fair that you get to just get here without doing all the hard work I had to do. So I do love the Joaquin development, and I think it is leading to potentially a redemption arc. I feel like Joaquin's character goes one of two ways. Either he gets his redemption arc and gets to be the one to take down REA Hone in the end, or he does all this work, sort of kind of redeems himself just to get taken out by REA Hone to show that he was never good enough to begin with. It goes one of those two ways. But I did want to jump in and say at least my defense of the Bomb and White fight. But
that's fair.
yeah, I guess that's all my thoughts on the nest.
Jesse, do you want to start with Floor of Death?
Yeah, Floor of Death. So I will say I'll put the Wangnan arc in it. I don't think that's enough to make it higher, but the Wangnan segment is one of my favorites in this story. I think the first 2 chapters of that arc are like the actual Wangnan content for it are some of my favorite moments in the story. And I really enjoyed. I mean, I love Arc Raptor. I like Prince enough. So like their deaths like hit me pretty well. I think Floor of Death also has a couple of high highs and a couple of low lows, but is a little more consistent than the Nest. So I like the Rachel arc in it. I really like the characterization that Rachel is given as someone who like does a lot of evil things and as you said is a little bit petty. But also, like, this is a really good arc for kind of proving my point that, like, she has the ability to rise above it a lot of the time. And, like, even though, like, she really complains about things not being fair and stuff, like, she can still keep her mind focused on the bigger picture. I also think Hell Joe is a really good character. I love seeing him as kind of a parallel to Bomb. Except in Hell Joe's case, he's someone who can't really control the power that he was given, and we see how that made him into a tyrant. I like the lore surrounding the Floor as well, with like his conflict with the Grand regime, and kind of how the Grand regime like weren't quite as good as they seemed either, and they're essentially keeping people trapped on the Floor. And it turns out, you know, at the end of the day, they kind of want to be trapped, which is a little bit sad but valid. Mata, another high point. The ending with Mata is such a good scene.
Yes.
And then also, like, this is in part of the series where I think the art peaked. That's a really, like,
Yes,
I like
absolutely.
it better in Name Hunt and Dowler Show, but it's still the same style in Floor of Death, so plus points for that. On the other end of things, I think this is okay. So I think this is another hot take, and I'm not even gonna I'm not gonna like go in depth into explaining why, but it's just a me thing. I respect it, but because so much of the story hinges on it, I just don't like the Arlene backstory. I just don't think it's compelling to me, and I think it's because I personally I just didn't need any of that for Bomb. Like all the conflict with Bomb in the tower was already set up to me just because he was an irregular. And we'd always known irregulars as foreign entities to the tower. And now that Bomb is intrinsically tied to the tower, it just takes away from his irregular status to me, and I'm a little bit sad about that. But it's still presented decently. I also don't like Enryu's character design. I don't really take points off for that. I just want to say it. I just don't like the way he looks. Like
Wow, he's hot takes.
He's
One
on
after
fire.
another.
Stupid to me. He looks like a K-pop boy or something. Like, I don't want to give this
no.
9,000 Shinsu spears. But
Dang.
yeah, Hell Joe looks cool. I also think I think the general events of it and just the way the plot of it is structured, because we have so many people going into that floor for various reasons and various conflicts, and it's kind of the same with Hidden Floor, where it just gets overshadowed by a new arc story that just has them going after kind of their own thing. I like the Bomb and Rachel rivalry, but I also think it kind of falls apart because Rachel was supposed to defeat Hell Joe, right? And we know that's never going to happen. You know, it just was not going to happen for her. But she barely even interacts with Bomb after they get their mission, and that's kind of disappointing to me. Boro. This is the end of Boro being a good character.
Yeah.
I mean, I
yeah,
like
this is-
Boro a lot.
Yeah, this is where Boro 2 shows up, right?
Boro, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Boro just becomes
Yeah.
like he becomes Evan. He just becomes Evan, like a really panicky guy. Yeah, like kind of like a.
Wait. I
Well,
don't know.
there's
feels
one
like Dad.
point. Yeah, there's one point in the series where Boro's character and what it was like really, really consistent, and then it just changes into something completely different. And then after it changes, it's consistent with the different new character.
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
some random guy replaced Boro at some point.
Yeah.
And I feel like the beginning of Floor of Death is that.
That is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then I think there are some other really good points too. I think Floor of Death also still ends on a very good note. Like White stealing the souls was such a huge shock to me, and I was so into it. I was so into that. That was like the main character conflict that I was like really looking for. I love Gustang giving him the monologue as he like when he shows up. I'm still undecided if I like what happened more than if White somehow got away with the souls. Because that would have been such a strong reason to keep the Bomb-White conflict going, and it would have really, and like Urek-White, or like Urek-White Bomb, like it creates a really good enmity between them, and I think it makes things personal for him. And having that taken away was, in a strong scene, still something that I think might have been a weaker choice for the overall narrative. And then the other thing is, I think Yuri getting a blanket thrown on her and then having Bomb touch her to break the curse. I know Bomb can break spells. That feels cheap to me. I liked when she went crazy. I thought that was a really cool moment of her biting off more than she could chew. Even though, like, as powerful as she was. So that was kind of taken away from me. And then the other thing in the beginning, the stuff with like I and the Red Witches and stuff, I think that's a strong reason for going after Helljo, but then that's just like not seen again really, and the conflict kind of gets depersonalized to something Bomb is just dragged into after he meets to Ja. And so I think it ended up being a less personal arc than what it could have been. And so it kind of averages out on like, okay, it has some great moments, but there's a lot of missed potential there.
Your criticisms and positives with Floor of Death are pretty different from mine, but we do align on some areas, of course. This is definitely where Boro, I love Boro so much, and I feel like he does get a pretty interesting moment where he like works with Kun to kill the leech or whatever. Like that's like the last cool thing Boro does, and then he's just comic relief. But I actually think he's still very different from Evan as a character, because I feel like Evan, in his comical moments, is very panicky, like, oh, Yuri, blah, blah. But at Evan's core, he's like the responsible guide to Yuri who maintains his cool and saves the regulars and stuff. So I don't know, but I think the Helljo story is definitely one of the highlights of the arc, like you mentioned. And I think one of the more controversial, I think there was a point where I was discussing this with the AOA show. One of their biggest, or Ian, I think one of his biggest criticisms was the memory wipe that happens at the very end, where everyone forgets what happened. Helljo forgets what happened. I actually, and I've reread this a lot, this arc for me is one that gets better the more I reread it. I actually like this because Helljo has his character arc, right? And where you really see it is when Yurik offers for him to leave. He says, well, at least you can finally leave. And when he says, no, I'm not going to leave, like I need to stay, that's when his arc, you see the arc finish. And that's really, really strong. So Yurik shows pity, or like he gives him another chance by wiping his memory. And because now he can have another shot at like living his dream and have another shot of like igniting that fire again. And so if we didn't have that Helljo completion arc and then had the memory wipe, I'd think differently. But I actually think the memory wipe is actually a good part of the arc. One of my biggest critiques is what Haku said about Yurik's minions. Helljo's minions. I think the only one that actually does anything is Sanchez, because I recently reread this arc with Amy, and Sanchez is there a lot. He's actually like...
Yeah, remember
like,
the screen time video, Sanchez was top 100, right?
Yes, like if he had like a more interesting design, like I feel like more people would have come to like it because like he looks like all the others, so it's hard to distinguish him. But aside from him, everyone else just does nothing. Same for the side characters. The Red Witch conflict is interesting. What I think is interesting is that we're introduced to the Red Witch clan and everything, and we're like, oh shoot, Hell Joe killed one of the Red Witches that was there, and like that's the reason we want revenge. What I think is interesting about that is we find out at the end that Hua Yun was just using that as an excuse to get the ladle. Yeah. So, like, that's all she wanted. She actually doesn't even care that much that a fellow Red Witch was killed by Hell Joe, which is a very interesting spin on that. I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it's interesting, though.
It's good for Hua, personally.
You do? Okay. For Hua Yun, yeah. It does make her more interesting, right?
It's a very Hua Yun thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
She's not like, oh, we got to get revenge. Yeah, I agree. I do, but so the lore of the Floor of Death, in my opinion, is what makes it fantastic. I think without the lore, it's not anything that special. Without the lore and without the Hell Joe story. So when it comes to the lore, I think I personally loved getting the Bomb development, learning about Bomb's past. I feel like it was something that we'd all been, or many readers have been questioning, like who even is Bomb, right? And what I like about it too is it isn't just like Bomb backstory. It teaches us about the 13 warriors and how they interacted with each other. It taught us about how Jihad and like the war that happened and the Jihad and Arlen romance. It taught us about the outside and the outside god, and so that stuff is also just as compelling to me as like Bomb's parents, you know. So I love that as well. And yeah, like I said, I think it's weird because it used to be like my least favorite arc, but I've reread it a number of times since, and I actually like it a lot. It's kind of weird in that way. So
wow, that's weird. I never knew it was your least favorite because isn't it the arc you started with?
Yeah. Oh yes, it was. This was the arc I started.
That's so weird that the arc you started with would be your least favorite. It's crazy.
I don't know. I think I, for some reason, had an issue with Yurik just showing up and like resolving everything. That for me. Yeah, I didn't for some, and like I still have problems with that, but it's not as big of a deal as it was to me before. So
okay,
I actually like to give a really quick defense of Boro too, because I have an explanation for why he changed.
Okay,
I think. So I don't like truly believe it, but I can at least explain it by saying, okay, so for the last 600 years, Boro has been tied to the Hell Train. He's a pretty smooth guy for the most part, and he's in his comfort zone. I think once he like beats Joaquin, once Bomb beats Joaquin, and he starts like going kind of past where he's been like on the train, so like he goes out of the train and stuff to these different stations and kind of moves on with his life. I think he's just thrown out of his comfort zone. He doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know how to prepare because he's just prepared for the Hell Train for hundreds of years.
Once he meets Andrasi, he's all nervous and starstruck.
Yes. No, I actually agree with that. I can see it. And also, he's been used to being like one of the top fighters on the Hell Train for 600 years, training students, and now he's like the weakest of the bunch. So that's kind of fair. Yeah.
One other super quick thing. I think I've made the world's only Charlotte the Temptress fan art.
Really?
Just
you did?
Wait.
Oh, shoot.
If it's what I'm thinking of, I've probably seen it, because I do think I've seen fan art of her before.
You've either seen that or I don't have the world's
only right. Either that or I've proven your claim wrong. Because I do think I've seen just random fan art of her before.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was so excited for her too when she showed up. I'm like, bug girl, let's go, and then nothing.
I like that. They were kind of endearing.
But yeah, I guess now we're on to 7th place. So what's everybody got?
I have season 1 at 7th.
Okay. I also have season 1.
All right. Wow. What is that?
I have the walls.
That's
okay. Here come the walls. Okay.
All right. I have a dollar show.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yes.
I guess since we have the same one, me and Joe will go last. So either of you want to go?
I'll kick it off.
All right.
A lot of what how I felt about the dollar show was echoed with a lot of the arguments brought up about the last station not being like the climax. and feeling like the climax to the Hell Train. I feel like once you get into the Dollar Show, like everything, like the story, like the characters that we're getting, everything that we dive into with the Dollar Show is, it feels like in a weird way, I'm like, Hell Train didn't end here. I have to keep reminding myself that there's still
Right.
extra arcs after this, just because of how it felt finite, that battle between Bomb and Joaquin, and then it rolls into the hidden floor and everything else that comes with it. But it's just, out of all the games we get in Tower of God, I feel like its rules were the most fun, and then the back and forth we get with Rachel and Cann I really enjoyed, and how she was kind of able to get a one up on him, just in how everything was turning. And it was kind of like a frustrating moment because I don't like her, and I'm like, come on Cann, you got this. And it's just like, nope, she's gonna play with you. And I kind of like Bomb coming in playing the superhero role, because that's what he was gonna be, like saving everyone towards the end. I really love how you brought up the fact that he saves everyone in every single arc. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yes, he does. And I really love that for his character. And just how it just starts to compile on each other, and you see the souls get brought into it. And I'm like, some of my favorite panels are in that Bomb and Joaquin fight. I love it. I really do.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, so Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I think for the walls, so honestly it's an arc that kind of breezes by for me. Like I think Joe, you said it was 16 chapters. It doesn't feel like 16 chapters to me, like at all. I think it's because I kind of just lump. I either just lump or I mentally block out the like the Yama and Evankel side of things, where they're like where they're fighting the army. But I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Like the one thing that it does that I love, like Last Station, I did not like Caliban. I thought he was super boring. All of a sudden we get the walls and he's amazing to me. I thought it did such a great job characterizing him and making the reader understand why he fights for Zahard. I loved that. I love the conflict that he has with Hane and Dewan. I think Dewan, at that point, was an amazing character, and I absolutely loved. I loved when she came out and she was against Bomb, because I understood why she was against her completely. I didn't understand why she turned her back on that in the nest. I mean, I understood it, but I didn't believe in it. But that was like a really cool conflict to me. Seeing Bomb, Cann, and Rack fight again in Season 3 was also pretty cool. I don't think it was like an amazing fight or anything, but I enjoyed it. I liked seeing them. There's some really nice cheesy dialogue in there too between Bomb and Aguirre. Like he's like, what is he? Like Aguirre's like, good to be fighting with you again. Wave controller, and Bomb is that goofy shirt. I have a shirt. I just realized one of the shirts I bought like 2 weeks ago looks just like Bomb's shirt in that arc.
Nice.
But and he's like, yeah, right back at you, light bear. Like that's like good. That's like actual. That's a really good dynamic that they have. And then of course, Rack is eating his rocks and he's putting the work in. When they're I think it's cool that they actually choose to get arrested too. Like there's like just a really like fun prison scene. And we get like a cool moment with Hatsu and them, or Hatsu and White, as like White kind of imparts his philosophy onto Hatsu and kind of tells him like, all that honor that you fight for, like that's BS, dude. I just killed people because I love it. That was cool. And then I also think it was cool to see the world building in the walls. Like I thought they had like a really unique culture and stuff, and just a unique ideology in the tower of like how they kind of stagnated over time, and like you can see Caliban's mentality conflict directly with it. So it's a lot of cool stuff in there going on thematically. And then you have the Yama side of things, which I just did not care about at all. It wasn't that bad. I just didn't really care about it.
Interesting.
That is fair. I would say that I agree with most of that, really. And like with the Dewan stuff, it's like I totally agreed too that her going after Bomb after what she heard right before she got locked up, it made sense. The issue with her character was like early in the nest where it's like she really very easily changed back and forth a few times.
That was a big no-no to me.
Especially when Cha shows up and Cha's like, "Oh no, I have this explanation," and she's like, "Well, I guess I gotta fight Cha now." And it's like, really, you're turning on Cha that easily?
That's the one. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But
It's okay with her fighting Cha, actually.
But then I feel like it kind of got better, or at least like as the nest went on, it at least got further away in memory, so that it's like the blow was softened, and it's like, okay, Dawan's cool now. She has this,
Right.
she has this relationship going on with Karaka. It's great.
Yeah.
So it's like all of the sort of messy stuff with her character just sort of fades into the back of your memory, because it's
Sure,
like, oh,
sure.
she's the one who banters with Karaka. She's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, Joe, do you want to do season 1 first, or do you want me to take it first?
I can start. Season 1 is weird for me because, like Haku mentioned, like I did the dubbing the chapters, and
Yes.
so in that way, like there was a point where I literally could like tell you the chapter quotes just in a row, like I had it basically memorized, but it's so. But I also, like Ron mentioned, I kind of have that weird anime effect where I'm like, wait, did Levin actually pass or fail?
Right.
I'm like, so that also kind of muddles it. But so season 1 to me is really solid. I wouldn't start this story out any other way. Like, it is very different from the rest of the series, but I think that's a good thing. It really is just like the introduction to the world, and it has phenomenal world building. Right from the beginning. I feel like because I'm someone who I love side characters, and the moment I saw like Anak, Kats, GBC, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like I love this cast, and so it does a fantastic job at that. It's the lore. I think so, and two, I know some people are like, okay, just deal with the art, like it gets better. I never had a problem with the art, really.
Same.
I actually think it's very endearing, and
Same.
I love seeing artists improve over I love seeing that, so I never had a problem with the art. I think the only reason why it's lower, it's just because it's not as good or as exciting as some of these other arcs for me. I think there are some chapters that, while they do a good job at character development or at developing the world, it's like a bit more filler-y kind of. There's a couple chapters that are like really, really short, and they don't really accomplish that much. And I think a lot of that is SIU just kind of figuring stuff out. And it's not really a huge issue, but yeah. And so Tower of God to me never needed a ton of action, so it's not like a negative that there's not a ton of action, because I love the tests in season 1. I feel like the tests in season 1 are top notch. But I also sometimes have shonen brain, and I love sick fights and stuff like that. And so I feel like the other arcs having that just gives them a slight edge. But yeah. Oh, so one other critique I had with season 1 is that some could see this as a positive or a negative. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts. It's a bit too mysterious at times, where it'll like introduce a concept or a topic, and then we'll just kind of let it float. So like the concept of what an irregular is, or the concept of the families or the heads of the families, it's like mentioned, but so like with an irregular, for example, I didn't even fully understand what an irregular truly was until I reread it like a number of times. And that could be partially because I didn't read the blog posts right away. And I know that during that time, reading the blog post was like, it was like right there, right? It was like much more normal. So I get that. But if you just read the chapters, the biggest example is the administrators being in charge of the tests was something that I didn't really grasp until a number of rereads, where it was like, oh, okay, Baum was asking to like do the administrator's test, not like the test administrator's test, or like that whole exchange, and Baum being an irregular, and that's why he can do that. I feel like I could have used more of an explanation behind that, and I feel like the lore there could have been explored more instead of just kind of letting it, just like naming it. And I don't know, that could just be me though, so I'm kind of curious.
I feel the same way.
Okay.
It took people had to explain it to me, like there's a difference between an administrator, I still
Guardian, test
Guardians, all
administrator,
test
ruler.
like, all of that is so different, and I'm like, I think I get it, and then someone's
Yeah.
like, no, you don't get it, and I was like, okay, I don't get it. Tell me again. It's like I think I finally got it. So it's
Right.
a little bit of that where it's just like so much mystique. It feels like you said, it can go either way. Like you can either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
That's actually a really, really great point, because one thing that's similar to that I've always loved about season 1, that I've brought up a lot, especially in like old videos, I was like, one of the things I loved in really early Tower of God is when you get like a lore drop from somebody, like let's say you get a lore drop from Yu Han Sung, you don't really completely trust the lore drops, because Yu Han Sung has
Okay.
things that, like, or when characters say things, sometimes these characters are just lying, or sometimes with some of the information from Leroro, there's just some information that they don't know. Or occasionally the information's right, but it has a bit of a bias to it, a bit of a spin on it. And like, you get the like stuff straight from the author themselves through the blog post, but I really liked in season 1 actually that you couldn't trust all of what you learned about the lore, because sometimes
Sure.
characters would just lie. Sometimes characters would just have their own bias, and I actually thought that was really interesting. And bringing up the blog posts is another important thing too, and also the translation, because I know you two weren't there for the company translation, but Jesse, were you there from before the line translation?
I'm not, but I found Tog through like a manga aggregator site that used company.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you have read like the company translation.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so before, like, I'd like to say like early Hell Train, again, just putting information out there for anybody watching, or any of you if you didn't already know, before like Hell Train, so it was a long time, like all the way through Workshop Battle, that's a chunk of the series. There was no official translation, the line translation hadn't started yet, so there was only the company translation, which was a really, really good translation. It had a bunch of translator's notes every chapter about like the sort of formal or informal speech that characters were using, or what honorifics they were using for certain characters and what those honorifics meant. And like stuff like guardians being guardians and the differences between guardian and administrator and all that stuff was so much more clear, whereas sometimes the official translation just interchanges like some of these titles for no reason, and it gets confusing.
Yeah.
And also, at the end of every chapter for the company translation, the blog post was right there at the end of the chapter. So for me reading from season 1, it was like every time a new chapter came out, I read the blog post at the end of the chapter. Like, that was just a part of the chapter. I didn't separate the two in my mind. It was like the blog post, oh yeah, that's the thing you read at the end of the chapter.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's another thing that kind of makes some of that older stuff different for people who come in and marathon on webtoons, where they come in and marathon and they don't have the blog post at the end of each chapter. Like, I've seen so many people get to say, like, I remember being like, no, Woo. I think it was when Woo did his reactions, and he gets to Gaston showing up, and he's like, why am I supposed to care about this guy?
Yes.
And I'm like, no,
I did the same
no. If you
Amy
know
did
it.
too.
Ah,
Yeah.
I had no
man.
idea who he was until someone was like, you know who that is? I was like, no, I don't know who that is.
because
Yeah.
And
it's
they're like,
like,
that's one of the
Right.
family heads. And I was like, I
Okay.
feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
like, but for somebody who like read the blog post at the end of each chapter, like, that's just one example, but there are a lot of things where it's like, I've been hearing about this for like years, and it's like so cool that I'm finally getting more information on this in the actual manhwa itself. Where
Yeah.
some people are just like, oh yeah, that's just part of the story. That's just where we're at
Yeah.
now.
Right. Right.
So yeah, you brought up a lot of good points. I guess I really didn't have a lot of notes for season 1, because we've sort of hit that point where I've always said in a ton of my videos, whenever I have something to criticize, I could do like a 30-minute plus video where I really break down all the things that I'm not a big fan of, things that I would change, how I would change it. But when there's something I like, it's like, it's just good.
like it.
So
Yeah.
we're
For
kind of
sure.
getting to that point where I have less notes,
Yeah.
because I just like basically everything. I think the tests in season 1 are brilliant. I love Crown Games so much. I think the character work that's done, especially with a knock, is just so good. Me personally, I guess I disagree with a lot of people because I love the art style in season 1. I really like the way that the art's really good now. I think it's really good in Hell Train. It's really good in early season 2. But the further along we go, the more it feels like it's stuck in a specific style. So many characters are just drawn on model in the same way, in the same type of panel a lot of the time. But in season 1, there were so many shots and like so many instances of the way that things were paneled that I was like, wow, that is really different. That's really experimental. And I, even with like anime and stuff that I kind of like weird artsy stuff a lot of the time. So I'm like, wow, I like how different season 1's art style is. How CU seems to take a lot of risks with it. So I actually really like season 1's art style because it's not that great. Also, something that I feel like I need to mention for season 1 and why it's this high up for me is the Rachel twist. The Rachel twist, to me, in a lot of ways, makes the series. That is the hook for the series. Because before that, I was like, oh, Rachel hurt her legs. She's going to get carried up the tower by Bomb and his group. She's going to be... I've seen so many series, so many shonen up to that point. Because again, it was like 2011 when I started reading, so like the big three and all that. I'm just like, I'm used to Sakura pretty much never doing anything outside of the Gara rescue arc. I'm used to Orihime not being treated or written that well. I'm used to the main female lead just being there for the main male character to play off of, basically. So to have Rachel be a completely different type of character is just so cool. It really made Tower of God stand out from everything else, and I feel like it's a big hook for the series.
It absolutely is.
So I definitely had to shout that out. And yeah, that was all the good stuff. The only negatives I had were TBH never been that into hide and seek. And yeah, ever since I read it like over 10 years ago, never been that into hide and seek. Also, the last examination was just kind of okay. Like, it was good, but it wasn't like, it didn't blow me away or anything. Other than the Rachel twist, it's like, I mean, Kun, Rack, they don't really do all that much. The stuff with Rin and like Andrasi and Anak is really good, but a lot of characters don't really do all that much. It's just kind of okay.
You forget that we get Pericule development, though.
True.
Like, come on. Like, we find out his reason. Like, come on.
Season 1 gives us characters that CU needs to give us back. Give me Hong Chunhwa and Sunwoo Nare back. Give me Blue Rouge. Give me Blue Rouge back. Give me who else was left out? Was it just Levin? Give me Levin back. Yeah. Bring him back, CU. Yeah. So yeah, that was my thoughts on season 1. So I guess we've made it to the top half. What is everybody's 6th place choice?
Good progress.
Yes.
A few of mine you guys have already said. All of you.
Oh gosh.
Shame. Yeah.
Oh yeah, mine you've definitely all said.
I can start with 6 then. I have Name Hunt Station.
Same. Name Hunt Station.
Wow.
Wow, look at us.
Wait,
look at us.
You all had Name Hunt Station?
Yes.
The 3 of us do.
Oh no. I have The Walls, 2 of your worst rated art.
There's The Walls. Okay.
There they are.
I have The Walls. So I guess since I'm the odd man out, I'll just run through my Walls notes first.
Okay.
So yeah, The Walls. I thought we had the Hidden Grove flashback, which was great. I enjoyed the Hidden Grove flashback, learning about them. We have White vs. Calavan 1, which I really, really like, and it gets made even better when we get White vs. Calavan 2 later on, because we've already had this fight between them where Calavan's got one arm tied behind his back, and White isn't full power White. So they're fighting each other, both of them aren't at full power, and it's really cool. It's really cool seeing these characters that, like, we saw Calavan fight Jinsung, we saw White throughout the series, but who would have thought they would fight each other? And then it gets made even better when we get to see them fight the second time, and White is full power, and Calavan busts out both arms. So, like, it makes that fight even better. We get Tonki, who I love. We get Delete, who I also like. I like Kane.
Delete.
So yeah, I like the art characters we get, and
Yeah.
something that Jesse mentioned, just seeing the wall and its culture and stuff, I really liked that. I think the Yusracha introduction and the ending to that side of things are incredible, because we get introduced to the 5th Army Corps, we get introduced to Yusracha, who is kind of the tying thread for Season 3, where we get hinted at him in the cage, then the walls we get his introduction, and he does some crazy shit, and then we get the sort of, not really conclusion, I kind of wish we would have concluded it in the nest, maybe. I
Sure.
feel like that could have been better.
I agree.
But in the walls, we have Yusracha, who shows up, makes Yama punch himself in the face. He pulls a "why are you hitting yourself" on Yama.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think the stakes are huge here. People talk about the series needing stakes all the time, but stakes don't always have to be character deaths. And in this case it was. We got a named character who was important through all of Season 3 up until that part. Kanzone got a named character death. We got named characters that were important to Season 3 up until that point. Verdich, who had had a relationship with Kuhn and who had defeated Venti, got kidnapped. We had Jordan, who had a relationship with Bomb and defeated Tall and had great moments with Yama. Jordan gets kidnapped. And we have Yama, who is kind of, in my opinion, the Wangnan of Season 3. Wangnan is sort of like a secondary main character for the start of Season 2. Boro at the start of Hell Train is sort of like a secondary main character to Bomb. And then Yama takes that role for the beginning of Season 3, being a secondary main character. When we're not focusing on Bomb, we're focusing on Yama. And again, stakes don't always have to be character deaths. Yama's whole thing in the cage was that he's been protecting and defending the canine people. He even turned on his own brother and locked his own brother up to protect the canine people. That's why he was doing the whole dang dang stuff, because he wanted to protect the canine people, and then Yusracha kills half of them. This thing that we've seen Yama sacrifice so much to protect gets taken from him. And I like when we get endings like that too, where it's a tragic ending and the good guys take an L so that it's going to feel better when they come back and get that win later on. So again,
I
the
love that
the stakes here were massive. In also the stakes in, we needed to get the 2 warriors from the walls, and we ended up with Cha, but one of the warriors from the walls went with Zahard's army. So again, people like to talk about stakes being huge. Bomb took a loss here with Dewan not going with him. Dewan saying, "No thanks, I want to kill you. I'm going to go with Zahard's army." And also stakes being huge in a character who had been important for all of Season 3 dying, 2 more of them being kidnapped, plus the Starbucks duo getting kidnapped as well, but they're not as important. And Yama having a huge character shift, plus the introduction of so many cool new characters. So yeah, that's to me why the walls are up there. I think it's a really great arc.
That's a great explanation.
It is.
I had just one comment that why I love the cage / walls too, and it's just what you mentioned. The fact, just the entire plotline of Yama being like a loner, but being forced to become the leader and like everyone caring about him. That for some reason, that dynamic I've always loved that dynamic. Just like the lone wolf / canine. No, that was just really it. Just the fact that the lone wolf becomes the leader of the pack, like that dynamic is so cool to me. I love that plot.
Yeah.
Got you. I guess now all of you get to talk about Name Hunt Station. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else start.
I can start.
Okay.
The Name Hunt is an arc that it's like opposite Hidden Floor for me. For the first half of it, to me, is generally unpleasant for me to read through, and I don't like the way it starts. I don't like how Bomb is forced to go there, and I don't like how the conflict between like the Aguero team and Shibizu team is kind of forced. But I think it develops into something that is like not just an entertaining arc, but like also kind of thematically special. Which was just way beyond my expectations when I started reading the arc. It has one of my favorite scenes. It's a minor thing, but I just love it. It's when Shibizu confronts them in the escalator, And
Yes.
like he's just a mastermind for this arc. He's the MVP. I love him so much. It like really elevates him in my eyes here. But like him talking about like how he's doing all of this stuff for his teammates, and then showing those teammates in the background as they're like all fighting for Andraste and stuff. That was a really powerful thing to me, to see how that team works together. And like even having like even as they go against Bomb and Coon and Shibizu, like kind of knows he can't beat them, so he like just tries to get them to like help each other indirectly. That was all really good. The main thing it does for me that's like really good thematically is it kickstarts. Well, Hell Train kickstarted it, but this is the thing that like really goes in on how Bomb views himself and how other people see him, whether he's a human or he's a god. That's when that conflict takes the forefront here. And I really like the debate that's held over like, you know, like he has the power to save everyone. He can save the name hunt. Aguero wants to keep him human. I kind of hate Aguero in this arc for how he does things, even though I understand it.
Yeah.
I understand it. He's kind of a villain for me though in this arc. But and then you have Bomb, who like does want to save everyone, or at least loves the idea of saving everyone, even though he like doesn't really get to know them. But it's really good stuff there. I think I also think Kaiser is kind of a weak villain, but I love the fight. The fight might be my favorite. I think the fight between Bomb and Kaiser is my favorite in Tower of God. I think it's just such an amazing fight.
It's up there, yeah.
And I also I don't necessarily like the way that Kaiser progresses as she becomes Elaine, but I do love how the arc actually concludes with Bomb believing that like Rack and you are dead, and Karaka intervening in that fight that goes on there. It's something that really like it's an arc that really grows into itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you want to go, Ron?
Yeah, I'll go. When getting to Name Hunt, it was one of like getting into it. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this arc. Like getting it explained and going through it, I was like, I don't know. And a lot of the moment between Bomb and Dorsey on the bed, where a lot of people like go to like hate her, I was like, I feel like that's a moment that makes me love her character even more, because for some reason I'm like, I feel her desperation. It's like, granted, maybe we can just talk about things, but the fact that she just felt so panicked that she felt like that was the move, it made me like feel for her, because I'm like, he could have done something else, but I understand. And it got me interested just to have everyone really follow her into all this. It gave us a lot of new characters, a few characters that we're getting now currently reintroduced back to us, and they were okay, but now hopefully we get some payoff with them, like with Lilio and Chilio and everything going on. But yeah, it like climaxing with the Bomb and Kaiser fight, it's like, you say it's your favorite. I didn't think of it as my favorite, but I start to think now, and I'm like, there's few fights that I feel like I could put in front of it.
The choreography's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I'm in agreement with everything. I feel like, so 9 and onwards, I have little critique, but 6 and onward are like just the classics for me.
Yeah.
Well, except one of them actually, but that is going to be maybe a little controversial. But so yeah, it has some of the best fights in the series. I mean, Ron versus Iniesta is classic. I mean, I think the art is insanely.
That is my favorite fight of the series.
Yeah.
That is my favorite fight of the series. I can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah, it's insanely good. And I think one of the reasons I love it too is because the side characters actually are all contributing across, except for Anak. I'm not, sad for Anak, but everyone else is doing something, and even like Dan and Shia backing up Ron and like saving him at the end while Iniesta falls to his death, and the fact that Iniesta even like dies, like he had a small character arc, but it was really solid, and the fact that he's not a direct descendant and all this stuff. So the side characters get a lot to do. I think the ending is so unexpected and amazing. Like Karaka just walking out of that train, it's like, and it explodes into something that no one could have expected, and it sets the scope for like ranker fights in general. Because like Yuri versus Pedro wasn't like a bad fight, but it was contained, it was smaller, right? I mean, there wasn't Yuri wasn't doing these explosions that show the name hunt station being this small in
Yes.
comparison. Like, it's just on another level. And the art starts to peak here. Like Jesse mentioned, leading into Floor of Death, this is like top tier art for sure. The moment where Hots like saves Team Ron by like cutting Chagrinsky's head off, like, is such a sick moment to reintroduce that team. And Hotson and Dorsey fighting the twins. Yeah, it's all really good. I actually think that Kaiser as a character is one of my favorite antagonists because she's sort of like the last normal antagonist that we get, because after that it's Hell Joe, after that it's Data Jihad, then it's like what, Calivan, she's like the last semblance of like a regular. She's the last intimidating regular villain that we really see. And we try to latch on to characters like Levy, but she really is the last one. So I like it for that, and she doesn't just have like one unique thing about her. She's not like a I love Charlie, for the record, but Charlie's like, oh, my white noise. She has like the armor inventory. She has the wolf. She has all the reels that are all connecting. She has like 10 different unique abilities and ways that she got to where she is. And I like Alfine a lot as well. I think the 10 bosses are all really underwhelming. That's one of my critiques, except for Inieta Alfine. Like, those two I think are solid. And I agree with Jesse. The pacing at the beginning is a bit slow, kind of uninteresting compared to the latter half, which is like insanely good. So
yeah, I guess if that's everybody's 6th place, then top 5. What is everybody's first entry into the top 5?
Okay.
Workshop.
Hey! Wow!
Wait.
Okay.
Joe, are you Workshop as well?
I am not.
Okay,
no.
I was going to say, are you all 3 in agreement again?
Yeah, we all messaged each other beforehand.
Wow.
Oh, man.
I was like, maybe I'm the one that doesn't know what I'm talking about here. I'm just the odd man out on every entry.
For me, this is where the nest comes in for me.
Really?
Okay.
It's a high. I understand it's high, but I'm ready to defend.
I don't think that's a bad placement, because like I said, it has some of the best and some of the worst for me. So it just depends on like how you want to weigh that. For me, 5th place is Hidden Floor.
Okay.
So yeah, does anybody want to take it first, or if nobody does, I can go first.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
I agree. Shouldn't I agree? Well, the workshop battle for me, the introduction for it is extremely strong. Like, I'm very captivated by one shot, one opportunity. I'm extremely captivated by Archimedes, and we get our beach stuff finally. Every show needs their beach episode. We get that, and like as like the semifinals and everything is starting, that's where I feel like we're kind of getting Bomb summoned as like a weapon because he's classified as an ignition weapon and all this stuff is cool, but the shining moment for the finale of the workshop battle is the Reflejo fight. And I feel like it's not as a good ending, but I don't think it's as satisfying as like, yeah, it's the end of the workshop. I feel like Reflejo, I just say it because I wanted more Reflejo, pretty much. I would have loved to see him continue on and how that would have like impacted the story, but that's mainly why like I enjoy the first half more than the second half, and getting them all reunited and sleeping on the floor is just like the cherry on top.
Oh man, that's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off that. So yeah, this is where for me like all the arcs start to just become amazing. And Workshop is just slightly less amazing than the next 4 for me. But yeah, there are a ton of strong moments. I agree. One shot, one opportunity is such an incredible start. It's so high stakes. It's like it's so frantic, and you get to like just follow all these characters. They're like trying to like fight various like they're trying to get their tickets, but at the same time, it's like they see this as like the perfect chance to like go after the person that they want to. So I love that there's like a rival for everyone, and I love the way people like interact between those. I think even though he becomes like less and less relevant over time, I think Traveler is given a pretty good introduction. I was like kind of endeared to Traveler at that point. And I also think the actual like start to Workshop, I hope this isn't beforehand of Arlene. I think it's after. but
Yeah.
like the little like Emily thing, it's so
Mhm.
cool. It's
Yes,
such
that
an
that is the
awesome
beginning.
start.
It is, yes.
It's like the most
Um,
unique chapter, probably.
Yeah,
That's true.
it's just a really cool way to frame it.
Like
I
half
love
of
the
that
way that
chapter is
SIU
like
does that.
them in the forest or whatever, and then it switches over to like a text conversation, and
Yeah.
you're like, this is such a weird change. But then
Yeah.
as that conversation continues, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, it
Right.
just gets like wild. It's super wild at the end. Um, I think in the growth tournament, the second half of it, though it's like the one thing that like drags it down for me is that I think like the end of it, like after Bomb gets summoned, I really like the Reflejo fight. I think it's a great fight, and I think it means a lot to have the core three fighting together again.
Yeah.
I think it's a little chaotic for me at the end, like kind of like around that as like everyone else is kind of fighting each other. Like I'm so much less invested in the other conflicts, and I'm also less invested in a ranker plot at that point. That I just want to focus on that one fight and for other people to get out. But people are still doing interesting stuff
Yeah.
in the background. Another thing is that Aguero and Rack in this, like I missed this so much from season one. Aguero and Rack have such amazing chemistry. It's like seeing them interact like every single time that just hits and hits. I also love Wang Nin's interactions with everyone in this arc as well. And like him just trying to go there to get Yang back was like really powerful for me too.
Yeah. Totally agree. I can't wait to talk about Workshop. You get me excited.
Right, same. All right, so Joe, do you want to take your fifth place?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, okay. I mean, I'm gonna try to keep it small because we could talk about the nest forever. It just finished, so I fully admit that a lot of my hype for the nest. So the hype for the nest for me, I do think it's unique because reading it weekly with like a chat who's like really hype and like I'm getting super hype and we just finishing it. It does maybe affect it slightly. So who knows what my thoughts will be in a year or two. But for now, I think this arc, it's the best arc we've had for side characters in a long time, maybe even like ever. Like since definitely
totally
since
agree.
Workshop. Okay, I mean at the very least since Workshop, and you know, like the fact that we, for the first time in the series, get a fight like an entire chapter for just Han Sung fighting someone like Haracha, who is like, oh, yes, Racha's minion number 2, right, and actually spending. SIU just really took his time with this arc, and I pre-hiatus is like whatever. I mean, it's interesting. I think Dakoko is kind of cool and like the way that all happened. But it's like I don't really have that many thoughts about pre-hiatus. But post-hiatus is like so good. Talked about Kendrick DL and Sean Hotz. I also love that. Absolutely love that we get more lore on like Donghae and like how that all works. And I think Hotz as a character really shines here. Yeah, I think the idea of tests, because I feel like for a long time we kind of strayed away from testing, and we kind of get that back in a little way with these little games and stuff like the Cat Tower, and even like Truggy's little game, which isn't like my favorite thing ever. Like it's whatever, but it does give the regulars something to do, you know, and like it is a game that I think is interesting, and it does impact the story, and I can appreciate that, you know, and I think the middle point. Okay, I'll say that for the end. Let me just keep talking about the best things. Traumarai is awesome. I think the Shinwan Ryu thing is just so cool. I think he's just really, really cool. And the fact that the Loco Bia family was such a focus throughout this entire arc, I never would have imagined we'd spend so much time on just one family like this. And I think that's amazing. Like, we got to meet so many Loco Bias. We got all this backstory. And we're not even close to being done with it either, because like there's still a huge part of the story. I don't know. It's so unexpected and so amazing to me. The Wong backstory is some of the best, as far as like my favorite flashback in the series. Amazing. I love it. Versus White, and it's weird because from a story perspective, I actually like it. Like Joaquin's character is so interesting during that fight. And I think Bomb losing it after hearing about his friends, I really like all that stuff. I think why I don't like it is because of partially because the power scaling. I mean, Tower of God has never been like super consistent when it comes to power scaling, so it's not a big deal. But I guess what I mean more is not just Bomb fighting White, but when Bomb resurrects Arya, to me, it sets this precedent that this can happen anytime in the future. Like, even if a character is beheaded, there's still a chance that they can be saved. And I don't, because, you know, the whole thing with the Firefish was like, oh, but if they die, they can't be saved. So it's only if there's a little bit of life left. But now, like, even that isn't a thing, you know? And maybe this was just a one-time thing where he reverses time. I don't know. But I really don't like that. I think it would have been better if Arya had just died, especially since she does nothing after this throughout the rest of the arc. She's always there, like in the background, but she doesn't even have like a single.
Even on panel sometimes.
Yeah, like you just see her arm. It's like, all right, I guess Arya's there with them, and
Also,
if you had done something with her, I could have forgiven that.
Also,
yeah.
she does have this moment beforehand where she's like, "Oh, this guy might be worth dying for."
Yes,
And then
right.
they don't really capitalize on that because they don't have
Yeah.
her do anything afterward.
Right, you completed that little arc with her.
I also
I
think,
think. Oh,
Yeah.
you can go.
so I also think that just the way that Baum got to the point where he got that power, like having the flashback with like having the flashback and like thinking like everybody that gets involved with me gets hurt. I wish I was like back in the cave and stuff. It didn't flow naturally into him getting that power for me. Like I didn't see how the train of thought. Like I kind of see it, but
Sure.
it felt like a weak justification for me for getting that. So I thought it was a good character moment overall, but the way it manifested was not the way I would have wanted to see it.
No, that's totally fair. And then the way the fight ends with, so I've always wanted Cann and Rack to, like, I don't mind them getting power ups. I think that's fine as a thought, but I feel like if you get a power up, it should be earned. And the fact that they're just like, oh, we're here, we'll help you, and then they just get all these white powers, and suddenly they can just like fly. It's like it just does not feel earned at all. Like it's not like Baum getting the Red Thrissa or Baum getting the souls, where there's like this huge build up to it. It's just like, oh, I guess they're like super strong now. I really didn't like that at all.
But it felt like we're at the point where it's unrealistic for Rock and Cann to be with Baum climbing the tower anymore.
Yes.
And we need to keep them together. So how do we keep them together?
Right. So
That's what
power
it
ups is
felt
a good thought. Yeah. Well, and that's why I like give them power ups. You know, like Rack with the ancient spear is like super cool, and like develop that more. That's why I don't even mind the Firefish with Cann that much. I do think it's overutilized, and there are problems, but it at least makes them like relevant. But that to me was just really forced. But a lot of this like middle portion is weak to me. I mean, we had like the 516th time that Cann dies with Nanotona. I don't know. It's like that's unnecessary. Like there's a lot of unnecessary here, but I think overall the high points of the nest far outweigh the low points. So that's why it's so high for me.
Yeah, and with what you were saying about Cann and Rack's power up, you know that I really dislike characters just getting power-ups. I feel like, again, I'm not a huge power scaling guy, never have been, but one way that I just would rather see the characters be at that high ranker level by the time they're at the top is just through their own uniqueness rather than throwing power-ups on them, because I feel like C really doesn't need the power-ups because he can already justify them being that strong without the power-ups by the time they get to the top. Because Baum's an irregular, but not only is he an irregular, I'm like, you don't have to throw any more power-ups on him. Just develop the Thorn. Like, the Thorn is all he needs other than being an irregular to get him to that level. Plus he has the red and blue Thrissa on top of that. Just develop them. Now he has Leviathan. Yeah, it's like, you don't really need to give him more power-ups, just develop what he has, because what he has is already justification enough. And the same goes with Cann doesn't need, and I think Jesse said something similar earlier, he doesn't need to be that strong in a fight. I mean, he can be good and crafty with his lighthouses, but he doesn't need to be all that great of a fighter for the role that he plays. Rack is already unique in being a direct descendant of, like, the native ones. And now having the Ancient Spear is a great way to, like, have a power-up, but have that power-up fit Rack's own uniqueness that he already has. And most of Baum's core allies already have this uniqueness that CU could play with to argue why they would be like high rank or level by the end. Anak has the power of Zahard within her. Shibisu doesn't need to be that strong because again he's more of the brain / comic relief crafty character. Have Hatsu be this like good, like strong-willed, kind-hearted swordsman, and give him Donghei, which is a sword that only responds to people who are pure of heart, and that makes him his own unique character that you could justify being strong enough. You throw in, again, Bomb's core allies. If you're putting in Elaine and Hockney's a Floor of Death native who can see the future. Elaine's got Fenrir, and she spent 1,000 years ruling over the Namewon Station. So again, all of these characters, you already have justification for why they could be that strong. You don't need to throw the white power up in there.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if everybody else is gone, my 5th place being Hidden Floor. Again, we're at this point where it's just, I've just got a little bit of praise for all of them, really. I said it earlier, but I actually like the early Hidden Floor. A lot of people week to week when I was doing videos on it were constantly complaining in the comments like, oh, I'm tired of this is so slow. But I liked the setup. I wish we delved more in depth into that setup and played more with that setup. I think in the end it is a little bit disappointing, but that's only because we didn't get enough detail with it, in my opinion. I think it's possibly the best training arc in the entire series, with us introducing Shinsu quality. I think that was a really important thing, and that was something that had always been in the series, but we got an explanation for it. And I think that's the way to do something. Don't introduce a completely new concept. Have a concept that's there all along, and then like 300 chapters in, we finally get explained how it works. I thought that was really good. And like before that, in the Hell Train, there was like the Rice Pot training with the God of Guardians, and I was straight up reading as I'm going along, and I'm like, I don't understand this. I'm gonna just go along with it. I'm gonna just read the chapters. I don't understand what's happening. I don't get this training. I don't like, I get what Shinwan Ryu is, but I don't get specifically how this is helping Bomb in this moment. But then I feel like they kind of made that all make sense with the Hidden Floor. And I think the reason that it gets to be in the top 5 for me is that when I look at the main characters of the series, a solid percentage of their character development happens in this one single arc. Like a solid chunk of Bomb's character development, with him understanding his own power, and all of this other stuff happens in this one single arc. Him confronting the Viol within himself. Having Kun with the stuff with Kiseiya, getting the Maria flashback. Again, that's a huge chunk of Kun's character development.
Dorsey never had development since like season 1.
Rack, learning about the native ones and the ancient giant that split himself into the 5 parts. That's huge for Rack. Again, these are the main characters, and such a large part of their character is just in this one arc. And then the hugest one is what you mentioned, Andrasi. That's the hugest one. For me, before this, I was like, yeah, Andrasi's alright, but I thought she was so overrated. I thought she was an extremely overrated character, and then Hidden Floor completely turned me around, and I was like, wow, I love her. She's potentially top 10 for me now. Just the stuff, learning about her, she's been around since the very beginning, but we get to see her backstory in Hidden Floor. Finally, we get to like see the full breadth of what happened before she was in that place where she had to fight to get to the top of the table. We get the introduction to the Snake Charmer that a lot of people forget, but the Snake Charmer is the one who selects princesses, so they have to be super important in the future, you would think. I guess it's a criticism. I know it's something that Joe also brings up a bit, but the Irure thing, where Irure was texting somebody and was like, ah, yes, the plan, or whatever, and then, like, nothing ever happened, and it's like, what was the plan? What was Irure doing? What was any of this? And yeah, I guess also it just has great fights. Bomb versus Data Zahard is one that pretty much everybody always brings up as being really good. But I feel like there was some other good stuff towards the beginning, nothing like as crazy, but I think the Sworn Enemy fights, especially because of the fact that Bomb doesn't confront his sworn enemy. Cann and Rack don't confront their sworn enemies. They confront each other's. Bomb fights Kiseiya and the big snake thing, and Cann and Rack fight Dataviol. So
That's
again, I really liked all that, but that's about all I've got. So
Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
you've already said, for me, 4th place is Name Hunt Station. All of you have already said that, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that the one that you were all the same on?
Yeah,
In
it's
sixth
number
place?
6.
Yeah, 6th place, all of you had Name Hunt Station. That's 4th for me. So what are all of your 4th place picks?
Mine
The
is
Nest.
Hidden Floor. Okay, you nice.
Yes.
Nest Supremacy. Let's
The
go.
Nest.
Evolution Road.
Wow.
Oh,
look at
okay.
that.
I'm really happy to see it that high up.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess I'll just, because you just got done talking about Hidden Floor, so I'll just jump on and add a
that's good.
couple things about Hidden Floor. Yeah, I mean, it's really good. I think it has some of the most, like Jesse mentioned, some of the most, like, I do think the first half is great because it sets up this, like, super interesting concept with, like, these data humans. And I love Bottas. I know a lot of people don't like Bottas, but I think Bottas' conclusion is pretty bad, but, like, his character at the beginning and everything is really, really solid. And I think it's just such a fun idea, having these sworn enemies come out and have to fight. You have to confront these biggest fears of yours. And there's a lot of subtlety with it as well. Like, it's one panel, but the fact that we get to see that White's sworn enemy is a sword, that adds a ton to his character. And it's barely even talked about.
Yeah.
That alone, you could talk about that for a long time. And there's a lot of subtlety like that in this arc. The big breeders are interesting. I feel like they could have been more intimidating, but it's still a fun. It adds to the fun concept. And the Yura backstory is great. I know some people. I've heard some people have a problem, like think that like Rack landing there through the Yura mirror and all that was a bit convoluted. I don't mind it. I think it's
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of fun.
mind it.
Yeah.
It's yeah, whatever, right? And the Shinsu training is great. I think, is this also when we get the Wangnan like backstory with like, because is that when we learn
it's
about like
right
Yes, it is.
before? It's right
Yes.
before
Oh, is there
they go
before?
in.
Yeah,
Okay.
When
you're right.
Karaka's waiting at the, I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
it's when Karaka's waiting at the gate and
Yeah.
he like starts strangling Wangnan or whatever, and he's like,
Okay.
I'm gonna hold
Yeah.
all of you hostage to get Bomb to come here. And Wangnan's like, wait, I have one of those rings like you have. And then he's like, well, prove it. And
Yeah.
sorry, you all stuttered a little. But Wangnan's like, well, I don't
Yeah,
have
you're
it right
good.
now because Rachel has it. And
right.
and then Karaka's like, well, I can't tell you everything if you don't have the ring. I know you look exactly like Zahard and presumably exactly like me, but how am I supposed to trust you? And then
Yeah.
I think he tells the story about like his mom or whatever.
Yes.
And Karaka's like, well, I can't tell you anything because you don't have the ring, but I can tell you that she wasn't just some nanny. And then
Right.
that's like, I wish we got to learn more, but that's where we were
I
cliffing
know.
with that.
But
and I
that
think
is
that's
all
right before they go in, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
And that
'cause I was thinking it was going to pick up in Hidden Floor.
yeah, but we get barely any. I mean, the little that we get is good of Wangnan when he gets the sword and everything there. I think this arc does a pretty good job with side characters. Could have been a little better, but like I love the fact that like Barrow and Eater Day were like they actually did something. It was like a couple scenes, but still better than the 0 that they've done until
Poor
then. and-
Barrow with her
like Haku
sworn
mentioned-
enemy.
yeah,
Toy
that
she
okay.
broke
Actually,
her teeth
so
on. Bad parenting.
that is like my dude. That's my only real critique is Boro's sworn enemy being a scary monster in a movie when he was a kid, and Barrow. I mean, Barrow's is a little more whatever, but it's just I wanted to see more. Sachi's sworn enemy, Haku's sworn enemy. Like give me more of that. So that's my critique there.
you just-
Finally, what Haku said, huh?
I was gonna say, you just reminded me of the scene at the beginning where they get saved by the turtle, and Hackney's like, oh, thank you for the ride and everything, and the turtle stands up on his back legs. He's like, no problem, and just walks away on 2 legs. I love that scene with
forgot about that.
Hackney.
Like, I lived in the park.
I totally forgot about that. And Haki, you mentioned this a long time ago, but I want to break. They could have done something so interesting with Boro and Sachi's sworn enemies. Make their sworn enemies Joaquin's, and then White merges with the Data Joaquin's. You could have done so much with that. You know, that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. You mentioned that a long time ago. My favorite moment though is Bomb with Data Viol, because we never really had a completion to like Bomb's Viol arc. But this, like, a real like finisher for me. But this finally completes it, where he's like, "I understand you." You know, loneliness. That entire scene is so emotional to me. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's all really good. I forget where we were all at. Did you both have the same choice? I thought you did, right?
I had the nest.
Oh no, you
The
didn't.
Nest.
Yeah.
All
I'll
right,
go nest since
go for it.
And then Jesse had Revolution Road, right?
Right, yeah, Revolution Road.
Yeah. So I'll go nest since it's kind of like you were saying, Joe, like recency bias, where it's like it's the most fresh thing, reading it week to week. It's like, is it this high? I don't know, but for now I'll place it here. It could drop, who knows how far. But as of right now, I think during one of my streams, me and Haku echoed the same sentiments of it. Has the highest highs and the lowest lows. And I feel like same thing with Floor of Death, where it's like highest highs and lowest lows. Like the lowest low is like, why are we letting her live in Floor of Death? But then, same thing with the Nest is, for me, I love the Bomb versus White fight. Completely loved it. I loved when it came. I loved like how it was progressing. I have this thing where, because Bomb is an irregular, I kind of like have given myself an excuse for whenever things kind of go his way. And I'm like, he's an irregular. I just kind of use that excuse. It lets me get over things a little bit too quickly. So I'm like, he's an irregular. It makes sense. I'm like, he progresses at such a fast rate. Where he started compared to other irregulars, like he started at the basement and they already came in fully grown people and then expounded upon that. So I'm like, I understand. It's like he's going to continue to grow exponentially. And like how I was feeling during that fight is, Bomb has always been described as like this endless void, where it's just like it's bottomless. We don't know if there's an end to like his potential and everything else. And like this explosion of rage from finding out about Arc Raptor and Prince, like turning into the Shinsu Rain and him spiraling out of control into that dark red orb, it kind of felt like we were getting a lot of that endless void projecting outwards. And it's just like a shame that no one else was there to see it. But I was loving it. And it was like one of my favorite moments all the way until we get Cann and Rock to show up. And I'm like, lowest of lows, because there's so many different ways you could give them power. Like we spent arcs training them and giving them giving Cann the Sweet Fish and the Ice Spear and his Enocore and his brain. Like all of these things, like have Cann work that stuff out, and you don't need to give him this. Same thing with Rock. Like he's like a descendant of the ancient and all of these things, and the possibility that he could maybe start integrating more than just rocks, maybe, possibly, who knows, and like flirt with that a little bit more. And you don't have to just give them white power. So it's like highest of high, lowest of low. And like that piggybacks for me into the Yama stuff. Like Yama is one of my favorite characters. Like his introduction in season 3 has been like a blessing, because when it was slow a little bit during the cage, I'm like, I feel like Yama's like, one, his design's cool, but I'm kind of like loving his like interactions with people. He's kind of dumb, but he has a heart of gold, and I can just root for him. I find myself rooting for him. So it's like to have him go against Yasracha, like the conflict is so amazing, but then it's kind of like this, I love the conflict, but then when Yasracha starts to talk more, I'm like, so what's actually the conflict? Like, are we afraid of Yasracha because he's extremely powerful and maybe more powerful than us? Or did Yasracha meddle with us when we were a baby? Which one is it? And it's like highs of highs, lows of lows. And it's like, I really love it, but then it's just like, I really hate it. But then we get all these, like, moving on to like the side characters, we get all these amazing backstories. And I keep mixing them up. Is it Kendrick who has the backstory of like being the leader of his people?
That is
Or is it-
Hiracha.
No,
that's
that's
Hiracha.
Hiracha.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that might be the best backstory. I loved it. I'm like, he was like, because it, like, all his Yasuracha's minions felt like they were, like, side characters. Like, every arc has their side characters, but they all individually felt like they could have been main characters of their own story. And fate has given them a raw hand, and now they've become under Yasuracha. And I just loved how we watched him go from being like a god to his people to like feeling the way he felt as he's dying, like reminiscing on the way that he felt when they went against him and everything. I was like, that's perfect. I was like, from start to finish, that chapter is one of my favorites. It's like, so it's like highs of highs and lows of lows. I feel like that's the nest. And then leading in the trauma ray, he's been a pleasant surprise, as much as I like to rag on him for his design just a little bit. But
Yeah, I'm not
he's been
too
like
into
a,
the design either.
Oh, really?
yeah, he's been a pleasant surprise. And anytime we get one of the family, he's been the family leader we've had the most screen time with. And just seeing him work, I want to say he's been the one with the most screen time. Like, we've gotten Gastang in bits, but as far as like chapter to chapter, where it's just like,
Oh yeah,
he's
for
there,
sure.
he's he's such a foreboding presence, and it just feels like in other arcs, it feels like you can see like you possibly could see past into where things can go, and with him being there, it's just like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I feel like if he says this is gonna happen, then this happens, and then we spiral with the warp and everything, and Hansung doing his stuff. But just having it, like, I feel like a sort of crescendo with him is really, really, really enjoyable. Unexpected too, because there's so much mystery into why is he showing up now, and what's his play, and will his actions drag any more family leaders into this, or is it just going to be isolated between him and Gaston? So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. A lot, except the one ally of Yasuracha's who did nothing, Mick Cage, did not
Yes.
get any sort of backstory.
I was gonna bring
did
him
not do
up.
anything at all.
No
Yeah.
Nanatona backstory either. I was waiting for that one. I was like, this guy's gonna get something.
You know what blew my mind? I was reading the wiki with like the rankings. Mick Cage was on the same like ranking as Elpathion. That's crazy to me. Like,
Oh,
he
yeah,
was
yeah.
their Elpathion.
Like in the
Wow.
same
He just
position, I
didn't
think.
do anything. And
Yeah.
the whole time, it's like, oh, it's that one famous like Simpsons clip where like Marge is trying to drag Homer inside, and everybody outside is just fighting like this absolute brawl, and Homer's like, but there's this one guy, and he's just standing there doing nothing, and at some point
Yeah.
he's gonna do something cool. I just know he's gonna do something cool, but Marge is like dragging him inside. He's like, no, that one guy is just standing there. He's gonna do something, and then like the door closes and we don't see what it is. And I was like, that was me with Mick Cage, where I'm like, everybody else has got a backstory. He's gonna do something cool. He totally is, and then he just never did.
No.
You know, I think one thing I want to add to the nest here, and something I think is I think the best thing that those flashbacks do is that for me, like one of the core themes of Tower of God is how climbing the tower like corrupts regulars and like makes them kind of like do terrible things as they come into power to achieve their desires, and they lose what they were originally climbing for. Like Kendrick, for instance, he lost his, care for the animals as he comes to the conclusion he just wants to dominate them. I think having those flashbacks is such a good way to tie the nest back to the main thing that I was looking for in Tower of God, or the main thing that I saw in Tower of God, so that was like super cool to me. I also just want to mention, now that we've all discussed the nest, I don't think a single one of us mentioned Misheni.
True.
Oh,
That's true.
Because she's the central
true.
character
yeah.
in that arc.
Yeah, I feel like, so I have screen time notes on every chapter in the series. I was surprised that Misheni really barely shows up in the nest. For her to be so central and so important, like, she's barely ever on screen.
Yeah.
Which was
That's
something that
interesting.
surprised me.
I think it's because she's kind of doing her thing, and it's like, I'm not even going to try to figure out what she's doing. Mashini's there.
She's galaxy brain right now
Yep.
until
Also-
Boss comes in.
Right.
Yeah, so I have Revolution Road. I'll bring it back real quick. Do I have Revolution Road the highest?
Yeah, you have it higher than me.
Okay, well, I love Revolution Road. I think it's okay. So there are some like minor criticisms I have for it for like the earlier parts of it. Like I do think the Murodic Guardian fight is a low point of the series. There's also one like huge nitpick I have. I don't know why I dislike it so much, but like there's this part where they go in the elevator. And it's like Ron's team goes into the elevator and they see like the stuff like, oh, this goes to the dining room, this goes to the waiting room, this one goes to the lobby. And they're like, it's definitely suspicious that this elevator is labeled by these. I'm like, what? You never rode an elevator before? They tell you where the lobby is. They tell you where the garage is. It's not a big deal. Everything else, I think, I love it, and I think it builds up to another high of the series, which is that second push. Even more than that, everything at the top is just of that place is so good. I actually, honestly, I think maybe not exactly as it was in Revolution Road. The chase up the spiral like to the top is a lot like how I envision like an end point of the series. I don't know how to describe it, but that like ties heavily into how I think the final arc is gonna go. But the chase is such a cool segment for me. Just like Yura, I was okay with at that point. She didn't really make me mad. I did like her dynamic with Danwa. I did enjoy him, even though I know he's like a simp, but I thought he was like funny. He carried on the Chunhua tradition. And I thought that was like really cool how he was like fighting Boro and Boro kind of handed Danwa's butt to him. That was really cool. Seeing Huariyun, I mean, well, she's taken some L's before. She took a big L with Reflejo. Seeing her take another L was still pretty cool to me. That was still a cool thing. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like his guide is now gravely injured, and seeing that they actually captured her was like also a really interesting position because like it wasn't just like Bomb just had to get to the cave where she was being. I was like, oh crap, she is gone now.
Yeah.
Throwing Wang Yan and Yua and everything with Wang Yan and Yua, that was so cool. It was like everybody that came in that squad, it was like they were so close to getting what they wanted. You have Wang Yan and Yua. They're gonna get Casino and they are gonna bring Hori-Yang back. Kun is like ready to take on Rachel after what she did to him, and those are really big things. And I think they all had really good interactions. The Rachel Bomb interaction is super powerful for me. Just like how Rachel, we're just like, Bomb, why are you still alive? Like, I still don't know how to like fully understand the dialogue in there, but it was super cool just to see how Bomb reacts and like to actually get him in a mad state. And the other thing, I think people rag on the early part a little bit, like with the tournament. I don't think I was that engaged in it when I was first reading. But especially now, as I have like grown to have some more character issues with Bomb, I really like the tournament arc because it has really cool moments of how Bomb taking charge of things gets people in trouble. Like it's not that high stakes, but it's like you actually have Bomb's allies questioning him and be like, why do you keep charging ahead? Like we keep losing, this isn't working. And he's like, guys, just give me one more shot. He tries again. Someone else gets out there. Bomb, you gotta stop this. And actually be vulnerable in that. And so ultimately Revolution Road is just a very strong arc to me.
Yeah, I'm totally there. I rated it really lowly, but I still love Revolution Road, even though it was really low for me. But yeah, if nobody has anything else for that, I'll go on to Name Hunt Station. So my fourth place was Name Hunt Station. I love it. I think it's also great because it's this contained adventure, and I love that so much in so many other like long-running shonen-esque series, when we just have an arc where I'm like, this arc was a really fun, good, contained adventure. Like, it has stuff that connects to everything else going on, but it also just tells its own story with its own antagonist group. I like that. I always like arcs like that. I thought it used the characters that were there really well. We got to have the Team Novik, we got to have Team Bomb, and we got to have Team Shibisu. All three of our like climbing teams were there in the same place at the same time, which isn't something that happens very often. I think, of course, as everyone said, it has some of the series' absolute best fights when it comes to like Ran and Iniesta, even though I really wanted Rack versus Iniesta very badly.
True.
That was still a great fight. I love Hatsu versus Shiliel. Andrasi versus Liliel's kind of whatever, to be honest.
Yeah.
Bomb versus Kaiser is one of the best in the series. Even, I think it's a little bit underrated, the very beginning with Ron versus Hess I thought was good. And see, that's why I kind of didn't need Ron versus Iniesta, because Ron versus Hess was actually a really good fight, a really good introduction to the Name Hunt Station, and
Right.
a really good like introduction to the 10 bosses concept. Plus, Ron gets the win there by overexerting his power, and he's like knocked out for a while. So Siyu could have just left him knocked out for a while, and we got this really great sequence of scenes, really, with Iniesta taking out Yiwa, and then Danwa trying to protect them, and taking down Danwa and taking Krishna from him, and then fighting and defeating Rack. So what I wanted, because up until that point, it wasn't until Rack started throwing rocks at Levy that Rack had gotten some W's. Before that, Rack was just taking loss after loss after loss, to be honest. And people were always complaining about that. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. He loses to Iniesta here, and then he comes back and beats him at the end of the arc. But then Ron got the Iniesta fight, even though he had already gotten a fight before. So even though it's a great fight, I kind of wanted it to be a Rack fight. And to be honest, the fights were so good that I actually wish the arc was a little bit longer, and I wish the other 10 boss fights were handled that well. Because Marte was just taken out instantly by Andrasi. We learned that like basically half of them had been taken out off screen by Andrasi's team. We had Yukon was pretty much one shot by Bomb, but I feel like that's fine. Who really cares? But again, we have more one shots. We have Vari Elvani gets off-screened by Waryun. We could have turned that into something. JM gets one shot by Novik. We could have turned that into something. Again, I'm pretty sure Lulu gets one shot by Sachi. We could have turned that into something. Give Sachi a proper fight. But yeah, I do feel like, again, this is my fourth-rate pick, and I feel like I'm tearing it apart. But I love it. I just do think it could have been better if it was longer and even more developed. I think also the character development is very, very good. I always talk about the conversation with Kun and Bomb on the little floating ship. And also the Kun versus Hatsu stuff I liked. It's something that people forget about, but it just added another layer to things with the two teams kind of feuding a bit. It added more to the arc. But yeah, that was where I was with fourth place, and now all of us have done fourth, right? We're into our top three?
Yes.
So I guess we're going to jump into our top three now. So what's everybody got for their top three?
I'm so
Hidden
excited.
Floor.
There.
Choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I have Daller Show.
Okay.
Same.
Nice.
I also have
I
Dollar
have.
Show.
Oh shoot.
Okay.
Solid. I have Return of the Prince.
Another
Here.
very,
All
very
right.
good one. I feel like with the ones that we
Really
haven't
season
seen, or the ones that we haven't said, a lot of our top ones are fairly similar.
Yep. Yep.
Except for me.
But yeah, I guess who wants to go first with this one?
I'll start with the Hidden Floor since you guys already have hit it. Hidden Floor, you guys said it more than I could. The introduction to it is great. The the lore building that we get, just understanding what the hidden floor actually is, and also heading into the hidden floor with an actual mission that we need to do, was all like it gave us more anticipation for it. Like as you're going through it, it's just like, well, how is this going to connect? When are we going to figure out what we need to get for Gaston and all this stuff? Like I love that mystique. The reason why I think I put it so high outside of the Bomb and Data J fight is the fact that it made me almost like Rachel. Almost like
Wow.
it, like because she got this revamp and the way she was moving, I understood. Like I always had a tough time with trying to understand why is she doing the things she's doing. Like if she just moved a smidge to this direction or a smidge this direction, maybe she can see a different way to go about things. But in that arc, it was kind of like how I can't who said it, where it's like if I wish like you could have explored her climbing more, being Icarus and being around everyone. I think it was you Jesse when you mentioned like it's the worst time to kill Coon.
Yeah, we could see how.
Yeah, it's like
nobody.
I
saw
felt
him
the
in
same.
such
Like
a
I
big
felt the
role.
same way, where it's just like she was like this character and she was likable. Like I find it hard to like her. I do. Anything she does, I magnify it. I blow it out of proportion. I get an attitude. I'm a toddler. But it was like she's likable. She's like in these moments and like she's coming through. And I was like, oh man, like if I forgot this was her, I'd really like her. But then it's just like every now and again you'd get this little nugget of, okay, that's her plan. She's gonna do something. It's just when is she gonna do it? And I really enjoyed that. I think I liked the killing Coon thing. I just wish that the killing Coon thing didn't turn into bringing Coon back just to kill him again, to bring him back again. But it's like I liked the getting him because it felt like, man, like what if he really did go right here? Like what if it was like this potential for Coon's character and we have all these things and then she just took like the most precious thing away from Bomb? Like how would it be then? Like how would that moment have been once they got out of the hidden floor? When he confronts her, Bomb confronts her and gives her like the declaration of like if she hurt someone again, like how would that be? Like if he actually knew, and if he stayed dead, like the confrontation with White or whatever confrontation down the line comes out and he figures out that. So I'm like, so that I really did enjoy it just for that aspect alone. Like I remember thinking that back when I was reading it. Now like we have answers, but it was a really big thing. But the main draw for me is the fight between Data J and Bomb. I call him Data J so I can differentiate like Data J and then hologram Jihad that's older, like King Jihad. It's just I enjoyed the fight. It's it made me like Jihad's character weirdly a little more because it was like flirting with the idea or to like discovering that he perverted himself in this weird isolated area, that he would go that far to tamper with something that would have no repercussions on anything else, because like you can't talk about the hidden floor once you leave it. So it's like no one will ever know, so why would you even resort to going back there to giving yourself information that literally does nothing for data on stored in the hidden floor? I really enjoyed that. It just adds more mystique to why Jihad does the things he does. And yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah, I love Hidden Floor. Guess I'll go next. So Return of the Prince. So like Haku mentioned, start of season 2 all the way through Devil's Right Arm, stopping right before Workshop. So this segment to me is the way I almost think about it is it's like season 1 but better. Like it gives off to me the same vibe as season 1 in a way where it doesn't have a ton of action. It's got a lot of character development, a lot of lore, and it takes its time, you know. But the difference is, it's in my opinion a better cast. Not that the season 1 cast is bad, but it's a better cast, a more relatable cast. It has a better protagonist in Wang Nan. Not that Bam is bad, but he was generic in season 1. He's just,
Yes.
Bam. Wang Nan is my favorite character in the series, and it's amazing storytelling. I think it has some of the best moments in the series when Wang Nan is introduced as a character who's almost made to be a little bit not like unlikable, but everything he does is selfish, and he's always like, I need to climb, and I'll do whatever it takes, even if I have to like fight this little girl. And like, he's in a way he's funny, so he's a little likable. But when he forgives Lurker at the end of Untrustworthy Room, it's such a powerful moment where it's like you can tell it's the last thing he wants to do, like the last thing, but he still does it because he wants to become king of the tower, and he wants to fix what made you like this, and that entire sequence, and that's what turns Bam around. Like, that's what saves Bam, and the fact that he approaches him about it and asks him about it, and I love that. And I love the Dan moment with Rachel, like we mentioned before. I think that's a fantastic moment as well. Everything with Kuhn's team, the Wolves not. The Flower of Zigna stuff is cool too. I mean, it's not my favorite part though of early season 2. I still like it. It's really, like I said, just like season 1, but better, in my opinion. Every character, I mean, Iwa is one of my favorite characters as well, and I love her character throughout season 2, her growth leading into Workshop, which I'll talk more about later. But yeah, nothing to critique here. It's all just so good.
All right, so then I guess we both have Dollar Show. Do you want to go first with Dollar Show, or
I can start with it.
All right.
So first of all, so like I've said, like this is like a period of peak art. Dollar Show itself like is the peak of the peak for me. I know like Name Hunt Station is Name Hunt Station is like a cleaner version, but what I think Hell Train in general and Dollar Show specifically do just incredibly well is that everything, like since it's in a Hell Train, like Hell Train's a boring environment. It's a train.
Yeah.
Everything glows in the dark, which is like, it's so cool. There's such good shading. You get to, it really puts an emphasis on character expression. And I love that. And it's also, and I think the story does that as well, where you have like, I was talking about this with Cat Tower. Everyone is like going off doing their own thing. They have their own mission to fulfill within the bigger picture. And I think it all comes together so well as characters slowly come together. I also think this arc treats side characters really well. I think we've discussed a little bit about like which arc treats them the best. I actually think it's, well, maybe season 1, but like Dollar Show is like really good for that for me, because there are so many. It's not even like everybody like gets like a section for development like Ness does. It's that all of these characters come in like with such good personalities. Like Barrow, I love watching. Bwelsar Elliot is like one of my favorite minor villains. Muntari is great. Muntari is great in Dollar Show specifically as well. I like him more than in Revolution Road. The real highlights though, the big fight between, for me, like the big fight not between Bam and Hakim, but between like Bam, Bwelsar, Yua, and Angel. It's like it's such an iconic scene to me. Like you see like Yua kind of like give into her own power and regress a little bit, which was like a super powerful moment for me, because it's one of those other things where it's like, like I had talked about earlier, how like in Nest, like climbing the tower, it makes you lose part of yourself. Season 1 has a lot of that. It's like, so we see with Yua there, like it's hard to stay elevated from it all, and we see Yua give in there. We see, it's really fun to see like Wang Nan and Yua also run around with Vicente like away from White as he's trying to eat people. Boro, Sachi, and Akka have an incredible confrontation where they like kind of reveal how they're all there for each other, and we slowly see the mystery of like what happened to Rowan and why it left them all broken. Bill and Rowan, the pinnacle love story by any means, but like the way that Daniel feels and the way he reacts to things and how he's so stuck in the past, it's really understandable. I think it makes him a great antagonist. And I think one thing that's like, maybe, I think, I don't see people praise this a lot, but I love it. Bomb is at his best in this arc, in my opinion. I love Bomb here. Like, in terms of plot, I don't love, like, him kind of sitting out for a lot of it and going to the rice pot. What I do love is when he confronts Joaquin. Like, every time, it's when Bomb is easiest for me to relate to, because I know, like, based on how he reacts to Joaquin, I know exactly what Bomb stands for, why he's mad at Joaquin, why he wants to stop him, and it feels personal to Bomb when I read it. And I think it's so good. I think it's so dynamic. And of course, Cann and Rachel that's the last point I'll make here. Cann and Rachel is also such a huge confrontation here. They go at it through the entire arc. You see Cann win the first round, and then you see more stuff, and then you see more of him just dunking on her through the second round.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. It's like it's the head of their confrontation, and that's when that's why I'm like if it was near there, if it was near like the peak of their animosity, if Rachel was getting like revenge on him and stuff sooner, I would have been like, wow, that would have been such a way to cap that off. And then, we just wait till it floor. But man, Dollar Show is just such a fun, dynamic arc, just full of strong characterization and expansion on dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So Dollar Show, I always say, like, whenever people ask me my favorite arc, I always say Dollar Show. So it's like, it's weird that it's third place here, but I had to think about some things in order to rank these arcs. And also, I feel like the way that things are divided up here, I typically always look at things as like, oh, the name of this chapter is this arc or whatever. So if we're going by like just the named arcs, Dollar Show is my number one. But with the way we've lumped things together, it kind of just filters down to third.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it is still my favorite singular, like, named... The chapters named Dollar Show are my favorite collection of chapters named the same thing. I think the ending of this arc is a series highlight, where we have the countdown, we have the Daniel and Rowan flashback, we have Bomb defeating White, all of that culminating in a super long, absolutely incredible chapter that I would still argue is the best chapter in the series individually. The side character content is absolutely great. I wasn't even really thinking that much about like the month or the wooden horse, but all of that is great. I didn't even really think about Yuri versus Pedro, but that's great. I really enjoyed Pedro and the Purple Dementor. But Anna versus Sachi, Boro, and Timaka is really good. Muntari is really good. I think that the one disappointment, I guess, for me is Bomb versus Elliot, because I was always hyping up Bomb versus Elliot, because Bomb goes into like Thorn Rage mode at the end of Revolution Road, and Elliot was still fighting evenly with him, and I'm like, oh, this guy's super cool. And then he takes down Muntari, and I'm like, oh, this is about to pop off. And then it just gets off-screened, really. So, like, in the early days of my channel, it was always a running joke that, like, Elliot got off-screened, and it was the worst thing ever in Tower of God. So that is my big disappointment, is that got mostly off-screened. I do think Yua versus Angel, that's incredible. All of the Team Cann versus Team Rachel games. We had their first game in the first round of Dollar Show, which was good. Then I actually often forget about, but really like the second round, where it's Cann, Waryun, Danwa, Rack, and Irure playing like coin flip, playing like the coin flip game against like Rachel, Yura, Traveler, and Kasano. Or like, did they play like rock, paper, scissors or something too? It was something like that.
I'm trying to, I'm not
That
sure.
was good. And then the Cann and Rachel stuff during the Bomb and White fight's incredibly good. And let's not forget the introduction of the greatest, the Sweet Fish, who sacrifices his life to save Cann, only to come back like a phoenix from the ashes, like so
Never
much
forget.
later in the series. And I have always liked to believe that that is the spirit of the same Sweet Fish, that he sacrificed himself for Cann, and then came back all this time later to be his Sweet Fish guardian. I love it. So, yeah, that was all I got for Dollar Show. But yeah, I guess from there we're into our runner-up, our second place.
Yeah.
So my second place, I'll say, is Workshop Battle. What does everybody else have?
Workshop battle. Same.
Season 1.
Last
Okay.
Station.
Nice.
Yo, last
Yes.
station, a hype.
Wow.
Let's go.
Wow,
Let's
that's gonna be so
go.
cool. Okay.
That's how I
Oh,
was like,
yes.
everyone had Last Station so low. I was like,
Yeah.
No, I
Look
love
at
when
what
things are
comes.
different.
It's exciting. I kind of
Um,
want you to start. I'm
Yeah,
so
right.
curious.
I want to know.
I feel like my number 1 and 2 pick are mainly off of like the emotional impact that it had. Because I'm not gonna say my. I feel like you could figure out my number 1, but the Last Station really kicked off for me because like all the stuff at the beginning with the guy and his daughter and all that stuff, it's just like if you didn't remind me, I completely forgot about it. But where it really kicked off, and I really loved the introduction to Caliban, where it's just like I feel like it's like there's all these powerful people are waiting in this one spot for these regulars to get off this train because the man up in the tower told us to go get him. And I was like really holding on to that, and like I want to see where this goes. Like, which one are we gonna do? Are we gonna do all 3? And then when you get to see the introduction, like I see the panel in my head with it's like darkly lit, and his eyes are white. He's playing the piano and he says Rhapsody. I'm like, that's such a cool introduction. I'm just like, just how it's just drawn. And then you get the backstory, and it really plays off of like how much I love thousands of years ago in the tower and the things that happened so long ago. And getting to see the relationship between him and Jin Sung and where they started off and the essence of bravery and all of this culminating into this fight, and then realizing, oh, like this guy's just a jerk. like at the end of the day, he's like just a jerk, and he's too cocky for his own good. So the emotion that it invoked from me when Jin Sung does like this desperation attack, and it doesn't do anything really. Like he's still standing there and he tanks it, and I'm like riveted and I'm like gutted. And then just to see Jin Sung go like full kamikaze only to like be thwarted, rip my heart out. And I'm like, okay. I was like, it's already ranking up there, but then getting to the point where it's just like hell, everything's happening at once during the fight, where it's just like bombs running around and the Black March and Alpathion and Ivan Kel shows up for the first time, and I feel like that's such a powerful introduction as well. And the power of the ancients and her just melting everything and this overwhelming. I felt like I was being won over with just the sheer power of all of these ancient things in the tower. And then people are like, go back to the beginning and this and that, and I'm like really falling for everything. And I just I really love how it ends. I really love how it doesn't, like, I agree where it doesn't feel like the climax of the Hell Train, but just where it ends and where Bomb ends up in the and he's like, we need to go train and you need to do these things, and everyone goes off everywhere. I just really loved it, and it really made me want to tune in for season 3, which was a little culture shock when you get Bomb and she's like, okay, here's Bomb and then these canine people that are dogs, but when they transform, they're really not dogs anymore. I don't know. Yeah. But it's just like the Last Station, it really was like, I guess it won me over with the hype of all of the flashing things that were happening. And it really grabbed me in a lot of it.
Yeah. Now that you mention it too, like that moment with Bomb and Rack, where Rack is talking about, what is it? Like hunting, something about being
like you're my prey or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he tells him something about you have to hunt, or I forget. Yeah, it's something like that. He flips it. He flips his usual hunting thing, and that's a really great moment too, because Rack hadn't really had a moment like that in a while.
I'm hoping the panel where he's staring out at Ivanka's flames goes somewhere.
True.
Yeah.
I was like, is that the beginning of something? Possibly. It's been so long since then, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping it was at least the hint that something could be there.
True.
True,
Also, the Machete twist was legitimately shocking. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't really see that coming when she showed up during the Ginseng and Caliban fight.
I walked
Um,
away. I did. I walked away and I screamed.
And I know, like, when I talked about Last Station, I briefly mentioned the Misang stuff, but I still love Misang going from
Yeah.
the little girl character that Bomb was, like, consoling at Devil's Right Arm to, like, standing beside him fighting rankers in Last Station.
With information that not too many people know.
True.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I guess since I think me and Joe were the same, Jesse, do you want to go with your second place pick?
Let's go. Season 1. So this is also I don't think this would really change my ranking. But because I think it all I think all like the splits and stuff, they still kind of average out for me in these spots. But season 1 is carried to me, and I think it was you, Haku, that we have the opposite opinion on. Season 1 is carried for me by Hide and Seek, because that one that was when I fell in love with Tower of God. I got so invested reading that. Like, Shibizu was my favorite character for like a long time. And I think season 1, I love the way it sets up its mystery. I also agree about the art. I think the art is great the whole way through. I understand, like, the character portraits are sloppy, a little bit sloppy sometimes in the beginning, and things get improved, but ultimately it's really good, really expressive. And I think especially something that gets understated in season 1 is that the backgrounds for it are just phenomenal. They are beautiful to look at. It's artistic. Same for early season 2, but then the character portraits get cleaner as well. But yeah, I think the intro is really compelling. There's a lot of stuff you don't understand between Bomb and Rachel, and I love how that gets built up. I love, especially like on a reread, it's really cool to see like these subtle moments in like each character as they progress, whether it's someone like Bomb or Rachel or Rack or even like Serena, just like watching their facial expressions or like watching how they're positioned around each other. I think SIU is so deliberate in like how he makes these characters react to things. I also think Andrasi had a really strong arc in season 1. I love the backstory that was given to her. It's kind of they're different characters, but I think it's like the same between her and Yura for me, where like their backstories completely change the way I understand them and how they act. And I love what it does for Andrasi through that season and through a lot of season 2. And it makes her feel so tragic to me, and I love the way that she and Bomb have a conflict in Hide and Seek. Like, even though they're on the same side, and she wants to help him succeed, like, Bomb just can't understand her. That's like a really powerful moment for me. There's also a really cool moment where Bomb stands up to Han Sung right before the final exam, and he's like, if I like when I get to the top of the tower, like all that stuff you say is up there, it better be worth it, because like all that other stuff is just garbage to me. And that's a really cool thing. I love the way the tests work in it. I also read it. I was so mad when they cut this in the anime. My favorites, or my second favorite scene in they don't cut it completely, but they abbreviate it heavily. My second favorite scene in the whole story is when Shibizu's hanging on to Quant, and Quant is like, he's like, I don't want to get my hands stained with the blood of regulars, and then everyone just laughs at him the whole time. Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
Like, I laughed out loud
yeah.
when I read that.
Yeah.
I thought it was so amazing. I like all this stuff with Yuri in season 1 a lot. I love the way she's introduced and how she's portrayed in this season. The Yannick and Drossi conflict is so good. Raccoon Bomb, their dynamic is so strong. I also love this. I can't believe they cut this one. This is like the one I really can't believe they cut. The scene where like Rack and Coon are like fighting and Coon's explaining Maria to him, and Rack is just like, I think on that day you're the one that lost your banana, you jerk.
Yeah, yeah.
That's such a good scene, and it's like it cuts to the heart of like who these characters are and like how they empower each other. They do it in the workshop too, but that's the scene that like really sets it to me between them. And so I think it's just so important for forging all these really strong dynamics the whole way through, and keeping development going through the season, and how we learn like how these characters were kind of corrupted upon even coming into the tower, and what they stand to lose as they climb. I think it's such a strong intro to the series.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Really, really great explanation. So,
Yeah.
I guess now we're going to sit and praise Workshop Battle.
Praise Workshop.
Actually, Workshop Battle, I have the least notes of any arc, so I can go first if you want me to.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess because it's so high up, it's like, what can I say except it was amazing?
Yeah.
If you split it apart into its individual segments, I feel like some were greater than others, but I think all of them were great. Like both of you that have already talked about it said, the One Shot, One Opportunity was incredible. I think Battle X Gamble is also really incredible.
Yeah.
Then we have the Growth Tournament, which I don't think you were as into, but I loved the Growth Tournament as well. I thought all of it was really, really just, I don't have a bad thing to say about it. I think the character work that was done with so many of the side characters was just really, really good. There was good emotion with the reunion with Bomb-kun and Rack. There was good hype with a lot of the really cool fights and everything. And there were high stakes with, like, Horyang is a character that was so important throughout Season 2. And then we lost Horyang. And he's still, like, hundreds of chapters later, he's still not back. That was serious. Wang Nan almost died. We thought he could have potentially died. There were just a lot of really high stakes. And the stakes were treated as something serious. In the end, Rachel's team got Emily, which was like one of the big prizes or whatever. But we also have the cathartic moment, the climax and culmination of like, we spend all of Return of the Prince. We introduce, or we reintroduce, like, Coon's team. We introduce or reintroduce Shibisu's team. We introduce Chang and Quietro. We get the introduction to Team Tang Soo-yuk. And we build up their plot lines going on with Emily, going on with FUG, and we culminate all of that. And of course, there's, like, not every single plot line in the series is tied up, because we still have to go into the rest of the series. But so many plot points are all built up and then paid off in Workshop Battle. And I think that's what sets Workshop Battle apart from a lot of other arcs, is that CU really, really did great work at building up all this stuff and then paying it all off at once. And it was really great. And it all leads to the cathartic moment where at the end we have all of the announcements on the screen, winner Team Tang Soo-yuk, and it's like, it's so good. And then when they return to the ship and we see like all the members of, like, we even have the Team FUG sort of refugee members like Jaja. We've got all of, like, we got Pericule, we have the Team Shibisu members, the Team Kun members, the Team Tang Soo-yuk members, all of them together for the ending of Workshop Battle. Again, with their teachers, Quant and Leroro from Season 1. It's just such an incredible, like, feel-good moment to end the whole first saga of Season 2 on. And I think it's that conclusiveness to me that's what makes it so incredible. And I feel like The Nest, I know, like, a lot of you rated The Nest highly too. The Nest, I feel like, was close to being there for me. I think if The Nest was a bit more conclusive, I would have even said The Nest could have been like that for Season 3. Yeah, that was my Workshop Battle thoughts.
Dude, I mean, yeah, amazing. I think the ending of Workshop Battle is the best ending to any arc. Maybe aside from Season 1. Season 1's ending is timeless, but like when it comes to Season 2, Season 3, workshop battle ending is so conclusive. It feels like it ties most of its threads together. I like what you mentioned, everyone coming together. Yeah, amazing stuff. I agree. I think every aspect of the workshop battle itself is really solid, from one shot all the way to the growth tournament. I think the fun part of the growth tournament for me is the fact that like every regular had a point value that you had to choose. There was a bit of a strategy in like, who do I summon? You couldn't just summon Bomb or summon the strongest. It was like, all right, we got to send in Wangnan because he's like our weakest, whatever, or our spearhead. But there's the whole thing about him like not giving up and his fight with like the twins and stuff. You know, and so he summons like Quattro and Arcraptor and like these side characters. I think that's just really interesting. It's an amazing way to unite season 1 and 2. You have all these people reuniting, including later on Quant, like you mentioned. I think I think Reflejo is a good antagonist. I don't think he's like the craziest, most awesome. I think it's cool that they brought in like he's like as strong as a B rank and took the trio to take him down. I think that's all really cool. The Emily stuff is cool. I think, you know, you could have maybe spent a bit more, like the Gustang reveal, like we were mentioning earlier. It's so awesome in retrospect, but there wasn't like a proper build up to who the family heads are, or even like who the Pobedao family is. Like I don't even think they were really mentioned in the series. So that's one thing I would probably fix. But aside from that, I mean, every character has served a purpose. Everyone. Prince had his moment with Misang where he, you know, and she's being like a little crazy and stuff at one point, and Pericule even like serves like an actual he's, you know, he actually serves like some kind of a purpose, and that's really interesting. And Nobik and Horyang, like you mentioned, what I think is cool is that unlike Name Hunt, where Ron has that cool fight at the beginning and at the end, although I love Ron versus Iniesta, it's one of probably my favorite fight, like Ron mentioned. But the fact that like Ron had his moment in the first half, but then Nobik was like a main character in the second half is so cool. Like screen time for Nobik is awesome. And Iwa's one of my favorite characters, if not like my second favorite next to Wangnan. And the build up to her finally mastering the flame, where she burns up the parasite that Beta was about to eat. She finally is able to control it. That's the first time. And she's like, I did it. Like just little moments for every single character. And Workshop does it so well. And it also has my favorite moment in the entire series, which is Rack and Viol reuniting. Viol's doing everything he can to stay away, trying to protect them. Yeah. And it's obviously such an emotional moment with Rack crying and everything, but I think what I love about it is that Rack is hugging him and crying, and then Viol hugs him back, which is, it's signifying him being like, okay, I'll give in, like I will come back. Because until then he was all in like they're gonna die if I come back. But him choosing to hug Rack and not like push him away is his arc like his character starting to change, and him accepting that it is okay to come back. And that's so yeah, everything about Workshop is just top tier.
Yeah, and jumping in on some more of the stuff you said when you brought up the sort of growth tournament, CU also wrote that really well with the point values like you brought up. I hadn't even really thought about it. Having Andrasi be so expensive that she couldn't be a part of it until the very end, where she came in to be the counter to Vargarv. And then also having, gosh, there are just so many great little character moments, but also having Pericule take down Ron and Anak and eliminate them in Battle X Gamble is really important, because remember, after that there's a scene of Rack yelling at Pericule, telling him, what on earth did you do? Now we can't summon either of them for the tournament. So it showed like how Pericule like legitimately messed things up, and how the team was like, now we're down 2 big players, now we can't summon Ron or Anak for this tournament. But yeah, you just reminded me of so many little things, like the date with Horyang and Gosang is incredible, and Prince and Misang setting them up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Or
love it.
Quattro getting his moment where he's like, you know what? I respect you, Wangnan. You're the kind of leader that I could follow. You go ahead and I'll stay back to hold this guy off. And Kuhn's like, that's why I chose Wangnan, because he's the kind of person who can bring people
Yes.
together.
Exactly.
Like, all of these little moments are just so incredibly good. And I feel like Beta's story was really good to me as well. I remember reading the Beta versus Bomb fight week to week after he had put his hand through Wang Nan's chest, the whole, like, parasite and everything. I remember I was in college at the time, I think, or maybe late high school, reading that, like, week to week and just being, like, so blown away by the Beta and Bomb stuff on the week to week. I thought it was incredible. And I guess that's another thing that skews some opinions too. Like, that's one of the reasons I said I rated Revolution Road so lowly, is because I feel like it's a difference for all of us, like whether we read things week to week or like marathon them. Because
Sure.
if I had just marathoned Revolution Road, maybe it would have been higher. But for me, I just remembered like it being a bit of a slog weekly. But then maybe this is rated so highly for me because to me this was something that I was reading week to week and like really invested in at the time. But yeah, if nobody has anything else for our second place, then we all have our number one arcs to reveal.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Anybody want to take the honors of first?
I'll go. I have early season 2.
Yep.
Nice.
I also have Return of the Prince.
Solid. Ron, what do you have?
Floor of Death.
Floor
Really
of Death.
good choice.
Oh,
Floor of Death.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I have Dollar Show. Dollar Show number 1.
yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You've taken over my spot as
Attached
number
it.
one Dollar Show enthusiast.
Haku, I thought we'd be together at number 1 here. I feel betrayed. I'm kidding. Who wants to go first?
I can start with
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
I'll also say real quick, Dollar Show is the arc I think I've read the most. I think I always love to reread that one. Early season 2 is a really well constructed and powerful series of arcs for me. I don't think there are any misses. I think I know SIU I think SIU said in like a blog or something that like bomb fighting Rex so early.
Yeah.
might have
Yeah,
been a bit
he
of a
has said
mistake
in the
due to
blog
scaling.
that
I mean, like
that's his
now
one
I kind of
regret.
see it.
Hmm.
Now I kind of see it, but like honestly, I did not. I mean, I was so
Yeah, I still don't
engaged
mind
in
it.
that. I still think, and I think a couple of us have said it by now, but I do still think that Ziggin is probably the weakest part of it, and
Sure.
even then, I'd still give it like a 9.5 out of 10 or something.
Yeah.
But 20th floor is such a strong introduction. You're introduced to Wang Nan. I was fine with him. I didn't love it when we started, I don't think. But I was like fine with him. He was a bit of a selfish guy, but he was still like lovable. Like he was pretty funny. He was desperate. I loved seeing that desperation. Like I loved going from season 1 where we see like all these characters with like their hopes and dreams and then like being slowly ripped away from them, but like a few strong ones they got to climb. And they're like, we think, they could make it. And then, of course, Bomb is sent off to do his other stuff. He might have died, but, like, they might be able to, like, progress in his stead. In Season 2, we just come to this cast of characters that's, like, so average and so
Yes.
desperate and unlucky, I guess, and untalented. And it's, I mean, a few of them, are quite powerful and talented, but you just see that this is, like, it's a much sadder and more desolate feel than season 1 was. Season 1 was like more pristine as they were in that more controlled environment, and now we're in the wild and we get to see Bomb at his loneliest, which is like it's really intriguing in the 20th floor. I think where it really comes together though is FUG and that like transition arc after, where you see how how he was molded by Jin Sung and Han Sung. That's also why I'm like, I don't like hate Jin Sung or something, but like I'm really negative on him as like a parental figure to him, just because like that to me is, despite whatever Bomb thinks of it, really it's a really powerful part of Bomb's upbringing, but it does like make it so I'm like, Jin Sung cannot be trusted. And I thought it was a really cool introduction to this like gray character. It was cool to see just how far Han Sung would go to get his goals carried out and just like unmask the mystery behind everything that happened in season 1. On that note too, Knot of Wool is such a cool arc to see how Aguero was affected. Like, he's as sharp as ever. He might even be sharper than he was in season 1, but he's like infinitely more distrustful. He's more underhanded. He's such a negative character now, and it's so cool to see how he was like kind of broken by losing Bomb and that betrayal, because like Bomb was someone who instilled like so much hope. And even Andraste, I think we get like word of her being like really like broken up about it too, and of course we see it later in Workshop. And that stuff was so cool to me to see. And then Ziggy Whale, Uruk has the coolest introduction for me. Just like the way SIU draws it is incredible. And after that, the mini conflict between Bomb and Horiyoung, and going into Horiyoung's backstory, and like Hand of Arlene. Hand of Arlene's my favorite arc in the series, hands down. I just think it's perfect. I just think it's like a perfectly crafted arc. This is also another big thing I have. Why do so little arcs happen at night? If Tower of God had more arcs at night, I would like it even more. I
agree.
Just some of those scenes, they're just like infinitely highlighted by like the darkness and like the lunar environment. But it's such a cool thing. Everything comes together in such a cool way there. I'll say just Hand of Arlene is really good. It's a perfect arc for me. The hand coming down as the climax. Another understated thing I think is Jaja is a really good character. I love how I love the twist with her, and I love her dynamic with Novik later in the Workshop. The best part about season 2 for me is Wang Nan. Like, I grew to love him so much. I think he's such a good foil to Bomb. Like, and as someone who doesn't always believe in Bomb's like goodness, Wang Nan is an incredible foil to him for me. Like, the way I view it is Bomb is someone. Now, I don't think Bomb is a bad guy. I think Bomb is a good guy. I'll put that out there right now. But I also think that Bomb is somebody with the power to save everyone and chooses to save those close to him. Wang Nan is someone with next to no power at all and still tries to save everyone. That's how I view them, and I think it's such a good split between them, and I love how they complement each other. I also I agree with what you had to say, Joe, where Wang Nan forgiving Lurker was a really powerful moment, and it saved Bomb. The scene with them the scene with them at night at the end of that arc is my favorite scene in Tower of God. Like, the whole like I want a wider sky. That's like my favorite quote. It's my favorite moment. It's also just beautifully drawn. All of that section, 20th floor, Knot of Wolves Zing and a Whale. That's the other peak of peaks of Taggart. That's honestly, I actually think that's. I have not seen a webtoon or manga like surpass that art. That's like, it's all painted, man. It's so beautiful. The environment's also good. 20th floor also has a lot of really cool like claustrophobic art going around in the hotel that they're in. And then and Wang Nan just being that guy who can like make the hard choice to forgive someone, to help bring Viol out of his funk. The way he plays off of Viol. I mean, the scene at night that they had at the end of the 20th floor, it's so good. SIU does it again at the end of FUG, where like Wang Nan comes out again, and he's like, "Oh, you couldn't sleep," and then he's like, after he learns about it, it's such a really powerful scene when Wang Nan learns that like he understands how he used Bomb, and like he goes up there to like tell him like, you're a really good guy, and I think that's his way of saying like, it was wrong of me to use you in the 20th floor, and like I really want to help you now. And that was such a cool moment. It just shows the genuine empathy that Wang Nan has for people, and also like another thing that kind of sets him apart from Bomb, whereas I think Bomb loves like more the idea of like being good, whereas Wang Nan like loves people more in a sense. It's like I don't know how to describe it, but like Wang Nan I think has like more direct empathy, whereas Bomb has like more pure ideals at the heart of his climb. Oh, interesting. Which I think is like they're such good complements to each other. And so it's just such a strong progression in that arc. Like each arc just builds upon the last, and then as you guys talked about, we get that amazing culmination in Workshop battle to cap it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I'll jump in since I also had Return of the Prince. I've got some thoughts. So, first off, I will say that, again, I'm in agreement that Flower of Zygaena is kind of the weak point. It's really good, so that's saying something that it's kind of the weak point. I always, when asked what my favorite arc is, I always say Dollar Show is like an individual arc. But because of the way we're doing this and we're lumping things together, I had to put Return of the Prince at number one, because even though I typically say Dollar Show's my favorite arc, I'm always torn with a few of these other arcs. Because if somebody asks me what the peak of Tower of God is, what do I think of when I think of Tower of God's best content, I always think of Untrustworthy Room / The Praise. I think of Team Tang Soo-gyuk climbing the tower together. I think of The Devil of the Right Arm. That's what I think of when I think of the best stuff in the series. Again, I guess I'm not going to go too super in depth because, I mean, you all know, like, the Untrustworthy Room's incredible. I love each of the individual character moments we get with characters like Goseng, but then Goseng coming back to Bomb later to apologize and be like, or maybe it was Wangnan that she apologized to, where she was like, I was wrong to say that I wanted to just stop climbing. And like every character, Ackraptor having incredible moments with the fight with the auntie in the hallway. It was just incredible. And again, the ending is amazing. One moment that none of you mentioned is the moment where we get the reveal at the end where Wangnan was like, okay, I'll give you your connector so that you can fail the rest of us and move on alone. And then we have this big emotional moment and Wangnan's like, okay, it's done. And Bomb finishes the game and they say the winner of this game, Juvial Grace. And then Ja Wangnan, and they list all the other names. Like and we get the reveal that Wangnan's like, I'm sorry, Viol, but I couldn't lose. So, like, the reveal that betray is a strong word, but he betrayed Bomb in order to do this was so good. The Devil of the Right Arm's ending is probably the best ending in the entire series. Again, it's one of those endings, like I mentioned before, with the walls, where the good guys kind of take an L, but that just makes the catharsis of them winning in workshop battles so much greater. Again, all of the plot points that were established with the Wool's Knot and FUG, and introduction to Kuhn's team and Team Tang Soo-gyuk and everything, it all culminates somewhere, and this is the build-up that gets us there. But I guess maybe I'm a sucker for, like, sort of the drama of unhappy endings, because I just love all of The Devil's Right Arm, but especially the point where we get the team switch, where Bomb goes to Team FUG with Ron and Novik. We got Reflejo, we've got Yuto, we've got Jaja, who I really, really love as a character too. Let's get Jaja to 100 votes in the character poll. Come on, let's go. She's almost there. Yeah, that's wild to me. I think she's actually going to hit 100 votes. But from there, Kuhn also going to Team Tang Soo-gyuk, being with all of Bomb's allies is so cool. And then of course Shibisu's team getting the news and being like, what, we have to kill Juvial Grace because he killed Kuhn. But then Rack getting the news and being like, oh, we good? But then
we're good.
Rack getting the news and being like, that's not true, that's completely wrong. But yeah, that's where I am. Best arc for me was Return of the Prince, or best saga, I guess, all in all.
Right.
Yeah.
Solid pick.
Yeah.
Solid pick. Okay, Ron, it's you and me, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll go. Mine is the Floor of Death, and I picked this because now, coming off of the anime where the push, I feel like it might be one of like the most unmatched things I can think of in fiction, as far as like me watching something and never expecting that to happen, and fully dumping into the world of Tower of God. So I feel like that would be my perfect ending. And it made me interested in Tower of God more than just a show that came on in the springtime. But the Floor of Death is where I actually fell in love with the series. I liked it a hell of a lot. Like I was dedicating like 6 hours a day just to planning and streaming and everything, just every single day to it. But I got to that arc and I feel like I was asking so many questions and finally getting an answer. Now, whether if that answer is like completely true and everything in it is what we could think it is on the table still, but I was like, I'm getting answers to the things that I really wanted. And I really like had this lore dump was like everything. Like I ended the stream and I remember sitting there and I was like, I love that. Like I love that. And then it kind of like put rose tinted glasses on for the rest of everything else. Cause even like everyone else has brought up things where I'm just like, yeah, that sucked. But I'm just like, in my brain, it was amazing. But I enjoyed Heljo so much. He's such a great character. And I just loved seeing who he truly was outside of the influence of the Red Thrissa. And it really endeared me to him a lot. And like you were saying, Joe, with his decision to stay at the end, I was like, oh, that's perfect. I was like, I couldn't think of a better way to end his arc. I loved a lot of the new characters that we got, like Garum, and just the allure of meeting a princess that's in hiding, and she had 2 of the 13 months, and she's holding on to all this information that she should be executed for, and I'm like, man, like, yes, this is the perfect place for you to be. But it was mainly like outside of like Mazino showing up, it was random, but it was cool. It just was another one of those instances where this is the difference between an irregular and what anything else is in this tower. And I feel like the conversation that him and Gaston have about him using like spatial distortion and the repercussions that it could have if he were like inaccurate in using it, it's just things that like stick in my mind where I'm like, yeah, like, okay, these guys are crazy. The fact that Gaston, a family leader, is talking to him like this, like we already knew he was a problem, but it just adds more to him, even though he doesn't need more. Like, first time you see him in season 1 with the back tattoo, it's just like, that's all you needed to know. They could have never showed him. It's just like, he's a legend somewhere out there. And it's just things like that build to that. I really enjoyed the competition between Bomb and Rachel. Now, where it ends is, but I love the back and forth and how she had like a relevant stake to everything that she was doing, and she was effective. She was very effective, and it was just like, okay, yeah, I don't want to give you props. So again, it was just like, I see you. As much as I don't want to see you, I see you. And yeah, it's one of those things where the lore drop is what really makes me put it up there, because I think it's the thing I can talk about the most when it comes to the series. I think it's like that, the lore drop, in conjunction with like the War of Genesis, anything that's like so far back where they're climbing the tower, or after they've established Jod's army and him being king and everything, like that time period is like, we could read the chapter, take 5 minutes, and then talk for 2 hours just about what if this and what if that and what about this, and maybe this story isn't all the way right because they did say she went crazy, so can we really believe her? What's the thing with the outside god? I don't know. So it's like a lot of that. It's just where I just like fully like attached to, and I can't let it go. Like I cannot let it go. Really, like it's like that's the point where I'm like, yes, I'm in love with the series.
Everything you said reminds me of why, like, every time I reread it, it gets higher and higher. It could seriously be like top 5 when this series finishes for me. It's so good. Okay. Dollar Show. Man, okay. So everything that you described, like that emotional feeling, that connection
Yeah.
that you had, that's me with Dollar Show. Like this is. I said that Rack and Viol reuniting is my favorite moment, but my favorite like fight character moment is Iwa versus Angel, which I'll save for the end. But okay, so Dollar Show. It's peak Tower of God for me. You have the build up from Revolution Road, which is incredible. You have all these people split up. You have Wangnan and Iwa in the train trying to rescue Huaruyun, but then they get captured. You have Joaquin, who is such an amazing villain, like such a perfect counter to Bomb. Like they're just such, because like I always say that Bomb and Rachel aren't really counterparts. Like Kuhn and Rachel are counterparts, and then I always saw Bomb and Joaquin as counterparts as far as protagonist and antagonist go. And you get so, and then along with him, you get this entire story with Boro, Sachi, Akka, and Daniel and Rowan. So I know Daniel Rowan love story. I mean, like the reason why I love it so much is because it's really the only love story we really ever have had in Tower of God. Like the only developed one. We've gotten mentions of like they fell in love, they had a kid. Like I guess Wang Wan and Nen Nen now. That's a pretty new one, that I would say. But as before that, this was the only one. And it's so good. It's Rowan just telling him like I love you is such a powerful moment because it's at the end of the arc. It puts everything into perspective with Daniel's character, like that's been mentioned before. I love the fact that there was like actual character deaths, and some of them not major, but like Muntari dying and just like that's a sudden shock. And even like Hongzhou is like a comical bird man. It's like, oh haha, the bird guy, oh he's dead. Like, oh shit, like okay, this is pretty serious. Like the stakes are really high. And Arc Raptor and Prince, like I love the fact that Prince is freaking out when he's about to die. He's losing it. He's a total coward in that moment where he's like, save me, help, help, help. And it pays off later on where he gives his life for Misang. That comes full circle. It's all just incredible. And I think the Bomb and Joaquin fight is so good. I've heard people say it's a bit Deus Ex Machina with Bomb getting the souls from Albelda, the clone. And I don't see it that way because I see it as the souls themselves like fighting to defeat White in that more Joaquin in that moment, which is so powerful because they've never like had that chance. And I that's the reason. And the clashing morality between Joaquin and Bomb is just incredible. But the Iwa and Angel moment is my favorite. This was the first. So this was the first time when reading, because I used to work at like a bookstore, like a really small bookstore, and I would read Tower of God when no one was in the store and I had nothing to do. When this moment happened, I remember losing it, and I stood up and I had to like stop and just it was so incredible for me. I can't really explain why, aside from the fact that Iwa is one of my favorites, but also Angel's story is she was abandoned by. She has 10 family blood, but she was like abandoned and discarded almost because of it. But with Iwa, it's different because like she's like the token Yan of the family, and she's the prodigy and she has the Yan flame, but she's dealing with having to defy her family because she found out what they do with the Ziganas earlier on. So Angel's like, oh look at you, you perfect 10 family person, but it's in perspective. We know Iwa's like also struggling with that. I just love that dynamic and that clash there. And what you mentioned before about the flames, like taking her over and Barrow having to come in and like stop her. It's so amazing. And the artwork as well with the flames all around her. She's just floating into the air. It's like so freaking hype. So yeah, Dollar Show to me is like peak Tower of God.
Yeah, I would completely agree. My favorite just named arc. But yeah, I feel so bad that I've kept you all so late. So does anybody have any more things they need to say about any arc?
I do. I want to say, like being a part of this, like hearing everyone like talk about like what makes them like and dislike arcs is like really like this surreal moment. It's like really the first time outside of like a stream setting, reading a chat, where I'm able to talk back and forth to someone about Tower of God, and it's giving me like a new perspective on things that I may have never even thought about, or dynamics that I overlooked or just took it at face value. Like I really did appreciate this. I really do appreciate this. It really has. Like I'm looking at my list now, like yeah, I shift that down, move this up a little bit. Just, I really enjoyed this.
Well, I seriously appreciate you being here because, like I said, I enjoy all your streams and stuff, but also it's great having somebody's perspective who started reading after the anime. I think having all four of us having started reading at like really different spots in the story is really good, just having all of the different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
I think it shows like all of our favorite moments isn't really where we started, but it's kind of like where it's like, oh, I can see like this is when it was resonating to you. Like this is where the series started to find its legs and hit its stride for you. Like it's very clear like how we're all like pacing everything, structuring it out.
For sure. No, this was super fun. This was super fun. I loved it. I could talk like the fact that we spent like 5 hours talking about just the arcs. And
Right,
we
that's
skimming over it.
I really thought,
really
oh
surface
wow,
level.
there's going to be four of us. This might take an hour, and then
We had about an
so
hour.
I completely misread this entire situation.
So like a few, I think like it would have been like 2 years ago at this point. There's a really large Tog character tier list that has like almost all of the Tog characters. I think it's missing like Muntari and Battis. And me and a couple of guys in the Tog Discord, we like just got on BC to like try to rank the characters and stuff, like create like a combined like Tower of God like mod tier list and stuff. And we thought it was going to be like 2 hours. It took us like 3 6-hour sessions because we just like discussed every character to death. It was insane.
Yeah, it's a testament to the series, you know, and
is.
what SI was made.
It has like infinite discussion potential.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I will just throw in a quick outro then, and then we can do whatever. So yeah, thank you to everyone for being here. Again, all of their stuff is incredible. Definitely go watch all of it. Bawss Jesse has gaming content, but also Tower of God Tuesdays, where he's talked with so many other Tower of God creators in the past, and I hope to be doing stuff with him more in the future. Dr. Bonehead, who, I mean, hopefully you're already watching his stuff. It's really, really incredible. Especially with the hiatus coming up, go watch Towers and Gods. I still haven't forgiven him for the end of the last episode.
What do you mean?
I will never forget. No spoilers, but I'm never gonna forgive Genbu. Screw him. I was in chat like, kill this guy, drop Genbu, and then everything happened, and I was like, I told you.
It's just you're misunderstanding his character.
And of course, go watch Ron at Kick the Can Productions. Does a ton of really great anime stuff. Has My Hero Academia stuff, which is great. And of course, obviously, Tower of God. He said he's going to be doing a reread during hiatus. So absolutely go check all of that out. So yeah, massive thank you for all of them being here. Remember, I guess by the time you make it to the end of this video, the poll's probably going to be closed, but go vote in the character poll. It's open until August 24th. We have over 12,000 as of the last time I checked votes, maybe 13,000 by now. I think we can hit 15K, but yeah, we've already more than doubled what I set as my goal of like 5,000. So yeah, I expect videos from everybody probably about that. Next week, expect the chapter 550 character screen time update from me. I'll probably try to bring some people in to do a collab with that as well. And yeah, everybody's reactions to the last chapter and all. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I guess like, comment, subscribe, and all that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.